That. Here comes the emperor. After a while, Wigumbu Jinmu, who had been called, entered the group. King Sejong immediately gave orders to Wigumbu Jinmu. Immediately arrest the Hojo officials who are under quarantine at home and imprison them. I follow your orders. Under the orders of the enraged King Sejong, 23 officials were imprisoned in Wigumbu. After receiving the report, Sejong gritted his teeth and muttered, "How should I punish these damned seeds?" Yang, who heard the rumor and rushed to the front, smiled bitterly at the sight of King Sejong. It was because memories of the 21st century came to mind. The welcoming party for new students that took place after entering college in the 21st century was a memory I would like to forget. The villains named Sionbi would feed him sabalju, mixed with all sorts of bizarre filth, or drink him until he felt like he was almost dead. This damned evil habit. Yang, who was smiling bitterly as he recalled the nightmare of the 21st century, spoke to Sejong. "Abama, I guess Hojo's officials have enough time to pay a courtesy visit." Sejong's expression turned evil at Yang's words. "I see. But did you ask to increase the number of people because there were not enough people?" At Sejong's words, Judge Hojo shouted with a white face. "Absolutely not. We are truly short of personnel. Do you have enough time to pay a courtesy visit?" It was done by a small number of officials who forgot their duties. Pansio Hojo desperately made an excuse. Yang said to King Sejong, while looking at the Hojo report, "Abamama, listening to what Captain Hopan said, it seems that the ungodly people who disobeyed Abamama's orders this time are quite capable." "Huh? Why?" "Not only the chief inspector but also other officials are clamoring for more people, because they have a lot of work to do. Doesn't the fact that they performed Mayan Sinri in such a situation mean that they have time left after handling all their work?" "Uh-huh. I see. If you look at it that way, they were quite talented people." Of course. As they listened to the conversation between Hyang and King Sejong, an unknown sense of anxiety gradually began to creep up on the ministers. While the ministers were trembling with anxiety, Hyang came up with a way to take advantage of them. The compilation of the family register data and land register sketches that were researched during the last cowpox vaccination has not yet been completed. Those who are currently in prison are competent enough to finish their work and have time to hold a civil ceremony, so why not leave this work to them? Is that right? Sejong hit his knee at Hyang's words. What a brilliant sight. Hopan, how long did you say it would take to compile the family register data and a copy of the land register? There are 5 more years to go. Immediately put those who participated in this work into cleanup work. The period is 1 year. If they do not finish within that time, they will be immediately exiled. The period of exile will be proportional to the amount they have not finished. If there is 10% left, I will exile you for 1 year. Or 5 years if you have 50% left. Do you understand what I mean? Yes, yes. Judge Hojo responded to King Sejong's words with cold sweat. Sejong continued speaking while looking at such a favorable judgment. During the cleanup work, pay them 80% of their salary minus 80%. There is no need for Gasol to suffer. Do you understand what I mean? I completely understand. Then do it now. Yep. I follow your orders. In this way, a saying began to circulate among officials during the Joseon dynasty that document organizing is more frightening than execution or exile. After about a month, the envoys who had gone to Ming dynasty to pay their respects returned. As soon as the envoys returned, they began reporting to King Sejong. Sejong first offered words of consolation. "You must be tired from going back and forth to the old road, and I apologize for calling you right away. However, considering the importance of the matter, I hope you understand that we cannot delay it." "No, I just did my duty as a subject." Yejo Pansio, who led the delegation to the funeral of the condolences, responded by saying, "So, what is the new emperor like?" He seemed to have a fairly gentle personality. His voice was relaxed and gentle, and his actions were relaxed. Is that so? What is the evaluation of the subjects? According to a brief conversation with the cabinet master as well as other ministers, he took charge of the position whenever the former emperor was away for conquest, and it was said that he was very stable. Is that so? Do you think the new emperor will also be active in conquest? In response to King Sejong's question, Yejo Pansio shook his head. No. It is said that the emperor said that there was a problem with the budget due to the frequent conquest he carried out, so he declared that he would not conduct a conquest unless there was a major incident. Is that so? In that case, Yojin will be quiet for a while. King Sejong's expression brightened at the answer of the royal court. Every time the Yongle emperor made a move to conquer northern Yuan, the Jurchen tribe also became noisy. Then, as a chain reaction, Joseon also became noisy. Sejong's face brightened, and he moved on. Where are the accompanying philosophers and contemplatives? At King Sejong's call, the royal doctor and the contemplative artist came forward and bowed. Youi of the National Assembly, Li Han-su comes to see your majesty. The lowly contemplative Choi family comes to see you. Yes. What kind of emperor did you see? In response to King Sejong's question, the royal doctor and contemplative scholar shared their analysis of Emperor Honghu. Sejong's face became serious after hearing the two people's story. So, there is a serious problem with the new emperor's health? So it is. That's right. After hearing the two people's answers, Sejong stroked his beard and was lost in thought. Sejong, who had been thinking alone for a while, gestured to the two people. It was a good report. You can go back. I am devastated. I'm devastated. After the physiognomist and royal doctor left, King Sejong asked the royal court a question. Do you think there is a problem with the new emperor's health? It didn't seem like God was very pleased. Pansio Yizhou recalled the image of Emperor Honghui that he had seen. The emperor, who was considerably overweight, had to breathe heavily even as he spoke. This is it. King Sejong, who was listening to Yezhou Pansio's answer, smiled bitterly and muttered softly. Is this the reason why that guy made such a fuss about me telling me to lose weight? How can we help King Sejong lose weight? Was one of Hyang's biggest concerns. For that reason, Hyang controlled King Sejong's diet, the amount of food he ate, and made him exercise. You bastard! Catch Abby! Catch her! Sejong grumbled every time the scent hit him, but to be honest, he didn't feel bad, because it felt good to have a child care about things for his father's health. Sejong, who was thinking about Hyang, smiled bitterly once again. It's all good, but the blowing thing is a bit. King Sejong was 27 years old. He was at an age where he would show off his presence the next morning, even if he spent time with the royal palace or concubines in each room. Anyway, Yeson. So, does that mean it will be difficult for this emperor to reign for a long time? No one can guarantee life expectancy. Sejong nodded at Yipan's answer. I guess that's true. The lifespan of a human being is something that only heaven knows. Here comes the emperor. It's not something that the emperor should be upset about. It's just that he was a little impatient. By the way, the emperor has changed. So what do you think will happen to the Shangdongshang dynasty that has been completed? Yifan answered King Sejong's question in a bright voice. That was the most talked about topic this time. It has been 3 months since the Shangguan dynasty was created, and it is said that as merchants from Joseon and Ming dynasty gather together and trade becomes more active, the taxes paid to the Ming dynasty court are increasing. You know that too. The amount of money coming into our government is also increasing significantly. So what do you plan to do? For King Sejong, the issue of preserving his superiors was one of the most important concerns. Yifan responded to King Sejong's words. It has been decided to retain him. The new emperor also announced that Shandong's superiors are beneficial to both Joseon and Ming and are a symbol of Buddhism, so it is natural to retain them. All the subjects of the Ming dynasty government also agreed. Is that so? Thank goodness. Also, it was decided to concentrate the navy of the Ming dynasty in preparation for any unexpected actions by pirates or Japanese pirates. An imperial order was issued to build a new naval base next to Shangguan. Is it? King Sejong's expression hardened at Yifan's answer. However, the ministers who did not see King Sejong's expression opened their mouths and said, I like it. What a relief. That's right. Heaven's help is coming. While the ministers were talking about the same content, with only slightly different sentences, Huang He gave the finale. If the Ming dynasty's navy provides defense, safety will be certain. This is a blessing from the Shang dynasty. Tisk. The ministers who said they liked it froze when King Sejong clicked his tongue. King Sejong glared at the ministers with an angry face. I wonder if Gwaine, being with Jiangduel, is really a good thing for Joseon. At King Sejong's words, all the ministers had to bow down and shout. Here comes the emperor. If you're a duke, you shouldn't do something that's dubious. Isn't that right, Wu Yuizhang? Huang He, who had been pointed out, responded nervously. Huang, the emperor is here. I told you not to do anything worthy of the emperor. Do you know what your mistake was? Here comes the emperor. SK, who on earth? Who started such a rumor? I'll take a break for a moment. Sejong, who was indignant, declared the meeting to be suspended and left the show. As King Sejong stormed out, the ministers continued their conversation with frowns on their faces. Where on earth did the dawn come from? I'm curious about that too. The ministers who were discussing their opinions began to look at Huang He one by one. This was because as soon as Huang He spoke, King Sejong immediately gave up his role. As the minister's attention focused, Huang He screamed, "I understand you." Huang He, who left her seat, looked up at the sky, let out a long sigh, and muttered, "Whoa, I can't eat it because it's so dirty. I should really hit it or something." These days, Huang He has been feeling the urge to resign several times a day. "Damn it, my son is the same age as you. I can't eat it because it's dirty. I know I can just quit." "Who started the rumor?" "It's your father, you bastard." I felt like saying this to King Sejong's face and handing him my resignation, but I had to grit my teeth and hold back every time. "Great. You must be patient. You have to think of the children. In particular, the daughter who married into Co Daegam's house still has no children and is just living off of what's expected of her. She must hold on for the sake of that child." Hut. Remembering his wife's earnest words, Huang He looked up at the sky and sighed. There were small tears in Huang He's eyes. While the ministers were unable to find an answer, Minister Hojo left the palace and headed to the East Palace. The place Hopan headed was the annex built next to the East Palace. "Are you from Hojapan?" "Good job." After giving a light answer to the guard guarding the annex, Hopan went inside. "Is Captain Zhang there?" "The deputy director is inside. This way." Under the guidance of the eunuch, Hopan headed to the room where Zhang Cho worked. Zhang Cho, who was discussing with his subordinate officials, greeted Pansio Hojo with pleasure. "Isn't this Captain Hopan? What are you doing here?" I came here to ask for your opinion." "Opinion? Can I talk to you for a moment?" At Hopan's request, Zheng Chu guided him to his office. "Come this way." Hopan entered the office following the New Year's Day and complained as soon as he sat down. "I can't live in this situation. I can't live. I need to know what mistake we made. Phew. These days, I feel like I want to resign and go back to work a dozen times a day." Hearing Hopan's complaint, Zhang Chu smiled bitterly and comforted Hopan, "Either here or in Pyongyang." In any case, it was an important issue that the chief minister was extremely angry. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Cho stood up. "Let's go together." "Where?" "Someone knows the answer." The place where the first day of the year went was Donggungjin. Qiang, who had just returned from Area 51 and was organizing documents, had to stop what he was doing and listen to Hopan's complaints. After hearing Hopan's tearful complaint, Qiang let out a long sigh. This is it." Since the reaction to the fragrance was similar to that of King Sejong, Hopan was very nervous. "Here comes the emperor. You shouldn't have done something that should have been done by Duke Huang. Is Hopan the person in charge of the country's finances?" "It's not enough, but I'm in charge of the job." "And yet you don't know the problem?" That's right. Tisk." Seeing Qiang reacting the same way as Sejong, something hot rose up from underneath Hopan, but he had to suppress it. "Your Majesty, please tell me what I don't know." "It's simple. The Ming Dynasty naval base built next to Shangwan is the problem." "Yes? The Ming Dynasty is overflowing with finances?" Hearing Qiang's words, Hopan let out a single exclamation. Looking at Hopan like that, I explained the sin in more detail. Although the Japanese pirates' movements have decreased, they have not yet been completely suppressed. That means that the navy next to their superiors is a new formation. How much will it cost? And what about maintenance costs? Where do you think the cost will come from? It must be your superior's tax. That's right. I'm sure the Ming Dynasty's government will talk about increasing the amount of taxes paid by superiors. But is that something they'll like? No. And who knows whether the cost presented by the Ming Dynasty is only the cost of maintaining the navy, or whether it also includes filling in holes elsewhere? Hopan's head lowered at Qiang's point. The words of Qiang were heard in Hopan's ears. "We need to send someone to our superiors right now and get information. We need to prepare in advance by finding out the size of the newly established Ming Dynasty naval base and how much a similar-sized Ming Dynasty navy uses per year. Do you understand?" "Yes? Yes." "Then move quickly. I heard you said last time, Abama, that you will do whatever the officers want. If you don't want to take poison in a group, move quickly." "Yes, yep." Hopan hurriedly got up from his seat at Qiang's words, quickly paid his respects, and ran to the palace. Qiang, who was watching Hopan's back disappear along with the dust, looked back at Zhangqiu, who was standing next to him. "Hopan will tell you exactly what he said, right?" "I think so." "Then what do you think Abba Mama will evaluate? If you compare it to a large fruit, it would be a bottle grade. Zhang Zhou answered the Hyang's question right away. The method of evaluating incense was already familiar to me. King always demanded that he come up with an answer that improved even a penny on what he said. That scent was King Sejong's child. I know the answer. I know the answer. The ministers, who had not been able to find an answer despite putting their heads together for a long time, gathered in droves with Huang He leading the way when they heard the message. We have found the answer. Okay, what is it? In response to Huang He's question, Ho Pan gave the answer that Hyang had given. After hearing Ho Pan's explanation, the ministers simultaneously placed their hands on their foreheads. Alas! I can't believe you left that out. The ministers, who realized their mistake, looked devastated. According to Ho Pan's explanation, they were just foolishly enjoying themselves without recognizing the biggest problem. What should I do about this? The chief minister's evaluation is, even if I get criticized like this, Huang He, looking at the devastated ministers, stepped forward. It's already in the past. Now that we know the answer, let's tell the chief minister. And from now on, let's try to prevent something like this from happening again. I understand. After a while, Your Majesty, please lift up. At the merchant shit's shout, the ministers returned to their seats and adjusted their clothes. King Sejong, who entered the side hall and sat on the throne above the temple, looked down at the ministers. So, sir, do you know what mistake you made? Yes, Your Majesty. Who? Wu Yuizhong, tell me. In response to King Sejong's order, which showed curiosity, Huang He calmed her voice and told her what the problem was. Sejong, who quietly listened to the explanation, stroked his beard. That's it? Yes? So far, King Sejong sighed in response to Huang He's answer. Huh? I can't help it. I hope you will try harder in the future. I follow your orders. Then let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Yes, next item on the agenda. Tisk, Joseon, which had been busy with a series of major events such as Ryu Zhonghaian's purge and the death of Emperor Yongrak, was gradually becoming quiet as fall passed and winter entered. However, as if this stability was not to his liking, a horseman carrying Jiangbo in his arms rushed into the palace. Urgent! Before the horse could even stop, the cavalryman jumped down and took out the handbook from his arms and handed it to the person in charge. The general report brought by the cavalry was immediately delivered to King Sejong. After seeing Zhang Gai, King Sejong immediately gave an order to Du Sung-ji. All servants above the rank of superior officer should come to the side immediately. I follow your orders. In response to King Sejong's emergency call, all the ministers who were attending to government affairs in government offices and Wajongbu rushed to the side. The same was true for those working at Area 51. Choi Hasen, Ikian, and Hyang got on their horses and rode toward Guangwaman. Arriving at the palace, Jiang headed to Pyonjian and asked the eunuch a question. What's going on? I don't know for sure, but I just heard that there was an urgent report from the north. Northward? Kang looked back at Choi Hasen and Ikian. Choi Hasan and Ikian were frozen like never before. Where does the smell of blood come from? The scent felt like the scent of blood coming from the surroundings. Kiang, who was looking for a place where the scent of blood was coming from, became very nervous when he realized that the scent was coming from Choi Hasan and Ikian. Is this the life of soldiers who have been through the chaos? When I entered the front hall, the ministers who had been summoned were already gathered. Forgive me for being late. No, sir. When Hyang apologized for arriving late, the monks came forward and responded that it was okay. Your Majesty, please. Not long after the incense was settled, a merchant ship announced King Sejong's entrance. While the local government and ministers were politely speaking, King Sejong, who had come to the temple, opened his mouth. It's going to be quite long, so everyone please take a seat. Yes, Your Majesty. Is this the good thing about Ondal not becoming common yet? There is a chair, evil. It leaked into the side street again. King, who had been thinking about something else while sitting on the chair the eunuchs brought, shook his head slightly and concentrated his mind. When the small commotion that occurred as the eunuchs brought chairs subsided, King Sejong got to the point. An urgent report came from the north a little while ago. Du Sung-ji, convey the contents of the urgent report. Yes, Your Majesty. The governor who ruled the town opened his mouth to the ministers. You may know that there has been a disturbance in the Jurchen area of Jeonju since last year. Although the disturbance occurred within the Jurchen tribe, due to the nature of the Jurchen, we, Joseon, cannot ignore it. So we have continued to trace the source of the disturbance. And not long ago, the Tambors, we have found out the reason and have given you urgent information. The ministers focused on Du Sung-ji's remarks with serious faces. Du Sungji's voice rang out in the dead quiet atmosphere. The reason why the Jianzhou aftershock caused a commotion was because large tribes in the north moved south. Huang He opened her mouth in response to Du Sungji's remarks. Why did they move south? It is said that they came down to the south under pressure from the Daldan, Jiqing, Tatar. What is the scale? It is said that there is a shortage of about 10,000 units. It's a big deal. When the ministers heard the size of the tribe that had moved south, they sighed. Unlike the Joseon and Ming dynasties where a family of 5 was considered the first family of the Jurchen people was usually 15 people. So that means the number of cavalry you have is at least 10,000 to 30,000. That's right. And that means there are at least 3,000 to 10,000 heavy cavalry. This was the part where Joseon was very nervous. Due to the nature of living a half-farmer, half-herd life, the cavalry of the Jurchen tribe was not very capable. Looking at past history, the Jurchen people were not people to be taken lightly. Although they were ruled by Liao, established by the Khitan, after gathering strength, it was the Jurchen people who overthrew Liao and established Jin. And that gold caused great harm to Song and Goryeo. After the Yuan invasion and destruction of Jin, the Jurchen people were divided into tribes. And that situation has continued until now. This division of Jurchen was the result of interference between Joseon and Ming. The Jurchen tribes, who had almost similar language and customs, could lead to the creation of a powerful nation if someone could unite them. This was not what both Joseon and Ming wanted. Who do you say is the tribal leader? My name is Li Manju. If a tribe of this size were to move south, it would be quite a big problem. But did the Ming just leave it alone? They say people gave permission. What? This? The ministers were shocked by Du Sungji's answer. Huang He expressed her opinion to King Sejong with a serious face. Your Highness, there is a possibility that this is the Duke of Ming. Sejong nodded at Huang He's remarks. I think so too. It's an aftershock. While listening to Du Sungji's report, Kang recalled memories of the 21st century. While I was aimlessly wandering the internet to do some reading, I came across a post called Li Songji's Presence. What? The blog post I clicked on was a post created using the records of King Taejo's annals. It was a map showing the Jurchen tribes that surrendered to King Taejo in their naturalization status. When Hyang saw the map, his mouth dropped open. OMG. Li Songji's direct influence clearly extended beyond Goryeo's northeastern border to the Jindao region, and his indirect influence extended northward to the southern part of Heilongjiang province. Is this a joke? Are you sure about the source? It was a post that had a strong impact on my memory of scent. After reincarnating, Kang gathered a great deal of information about the relationship between the Jurchen people and Joseon. For Hyang, it was a kind of cross-checking. Hyang, who was checking the data she had collected, burst into laughter. Does this remind you of a scene from a gangster movie? What Hyang said was about the war of words between Emperor Taizong and Emperor Yongle. No matter how you look at that part, it was like a scene from a gangster movie. Hey, Chairman Jiu, you can't do this. Even if our Joseon faction falls under the Minggu faction, we cannot do this. The Minghua faction has come to the Yang Yojin area and is making a fuss. Mind, the Yang Jurchen area is an area that even our predecessor, Chairman Jiu, said was our Joseon faction. Mind, do you have any sense of humor? That's not true. What? The Jurchen area is also a Myeongguk faction area? You're talking about forgetting about ghosts. Shall we blow it? Our Joseon faction's heads will be broken, but you guys from the Minggu faction will be fine. Ugh. Should we stick together now? Shall we blow the drum without thinking about it? After a rough exchange of words regarding the Jurchen region, King Taejong brought out the confirmation of Zhu Yuanzhang and obtained a concession from Emperor Yongrak. From then on, the Jurchen region became an arena of competition between the three countries. Ming and Joseon were expanding their influence in metallurgy, aiming to outwit each other in the Jinju Jurchen and Yang Jurchen, and above them, Bukwon was looking for opportunities, dreaming of conquering the region. Because it was such a complicated situation, not only the ministers but also King Sejong were suspicious of Ming dynasty's machinations. The situation is critical, sir. Please think of a good plan. Yes, Your Majesty. While the ministers who received orders were exchanging opinions, Kang reminisced. The presence and influence of King Taejo Li Songjiwai among the Jurchen people was certainly powerful. However, this influence is gradually decreasing as it descends into King Taejong and Sejong. The reason for this was that, unlike Li Songjiwai, who had quite direct contact, the number and intensity of direct contact decreased while he stayed in the palace. Although the influence is decreasing, the influence on Songjiwai Li and Sun is still alive. The problem is that the subject exerting this influence is Lee Seong-gye's descendants, not Joseon. Let's see. Was it since the reign of King Sejong that the transaction relationship became purely for profit? I think I saw somewhere that quite influential Jurchen tribe chiefs got involved in the movement to restore King Danjong and ended up dying, which led to a complete conflict with the Jurchen tribe. This is it. If you're less interested, the habit of vaguely remembering things becomes problematic. Kang grumbled inwardly and continued to think about a good move. However, even after thinking about it for a while, the only answer I could come up with was a standard one. Shit, is this the best? Kiang, who had been swearing in a situation where he couldn't come up with an ingenious answer, opened his mouth with an expression that said there was nothing he could do. Abima, I think that in the current situation, trickery is of little use, and we must go straight. Jong-sik? Yes, Abima. I believe that we must strengthen Joseon's capabilities, reform its military system to make it more stable, and then subjugate the Jurchen. In response to Hyang, Sejong stroked his beard. Was that the best? This is the best we can do under the circumstances. Reality is a gutter. When I think of your wit on a daily basis, I'll say it again, the current situation in our Joseon dynasty makes it difficult to use a strategy. A strategy is a fluke that is difficult to overcome. In response to Hyang's answer, Sejong made a disapproving sound. Looking at Sejong like that, Hyang added, a strategy becomes more valuable when there is room for it. No matter how much strategy there is, isn't it possible for a single soldier to defeat Xiangyu? What? If the spearman had been holding a machine gun instead of a spear, the story might have been different. Sejong, who heard Hyang's words, nodded. That is so. It is truly a pity. Sirs, listen. I will listen, Your Majesty. Please come up with a plan to reform the military system. This is also necessary for the military. If this incident had not happened, I would have planned to create and implement it a little later, but the situation is changing rapidly, so quick measures are needed. I follow your orders. An order was given to the ministers, but King Sejong did not look satisfied. I think there is a more cost-effective solution. Hearing King Sejong's regretful words, the ministers began to sweat and shake their heads. If you go a little further from there, a disgusting TSK will come out, and then it will be a situation where you will have to shout, Huang Gong Ha, at the top of your lungs. Think. While the ministers were desperately thinking, Kang made a suggestion to King Sejong. Abima, as a second best option, how about calling the Yang Jurchen tribe leaders to the palace and comforting them? Call the tribal leaders to the palace? Yes. There is a saying going around that says, when the body grows distant, the mind grows distant too. Is this limited to relationships between men and women? If you call the tribal leaders and comfort them, they will be thrilled by Abimama's kindness. I see. Sejong nodded at Hyang's words. As Sejong responded well, Hyang's voice began to gain strength. As Joseon's capabilities become stronger, the tribal leaders who come to visit us will have to make a choice. A gift in one hand or a club in the other. That's great. You're going to need a very strong club for that, right? That's right. Sejong nodded deeply at Hyang's words. I like it very much. 5 days later, the ministers developed the plan for reforming the military system and presented it to King Sejong. Let's see. King Sejong, who was reading the policy submitted by the ministers, raised his head and glared at the ministers. Is this best? Here comes the emperor. SK, did you actually look at the light book that Gwaine made? Here comes the emperor. While he was repeatedly bowing his head, he stepped forward. I think that's the best given the current situation in Joseon. Look, Wei Zhongwu. Is just changing the name of an office a reform? Which is best? Here comes the emperor. That's okay. I'd rather make it myself. Please kill me. Are you sure you want to do that? Here comes the emperor. In the end, as he said, King Sejong himself began to create measures to reform the military system. First of all, based on the expansion of government finances in the future. King Sejong, who created a basic plan by referring to the book he had written, handed it over to Jifyeonjian. Review and find improvements. I follow your orders. Sejong, who had taken the measures he had come up with through Jifyeonjian, began to reconsider. Sejong frowned after examining the policy several times. I don't like it anyway. Sejong, who was worried, looked for incense. This is a policy that was created. What do you think? This is a masterpiece that Abima made after much effort. Wouldn't it be the best? Even if you flatter them like that, it is impossible to increase the research institute's budget. In the end, The fragrance worked with Sejong to create an improvement plan. Wouldn't the positions in the military be completely separated and filled by non-commissioned officers? Won't the tattooists rise up? If we make a mistake, there will also be those who talk about a military regime. So, didn't they leave the authority over budget and personnel to the Minister of Military Affairs and the Vice Minister, and have the minister take charge of those two? Wouldn't it be better to completely separate and take charge of everything? Then there is a very high possibility that Newbin will completely ignore Munban and take the lead. If that happens, it will be the second coming of the Mushin regime. Even though I'm here, Abamama will be the reason for that soloism. Is that so? It will definitely happen. Yang answered firmly. There actually was such an organization, the Imperial Army of the Great Empire of Japan. After much debate, the reform of the military system began. It was a reform symbolized by the Joseon Army General Staff Headquarters and the Training Center. Hadat Pansio Hojo sighed as he looked at the mountain of scrolls and books in front of him. The name of Judge Hojo, whose size like the earth is falling, is Kim Jiam. According to the original history, at the beginning of King Sejong's accession to the throne, he would have appointed Hojo, then moved to Hyangzhou, and then served as governor of Pyongan province. However, his fate changed in this history. There were several regular personnel changes in the government. It was customary for ministers of the government to change positions regularly once a year. But Kim Jiam continued to remain in the position of Hojo Pansio. I don't know if this is luck or misfortune. Kim Jiam, the person involved, was wondering whether it was a good thing or a bad thing for him to remain in office as Judge Hojo, but his wife was actually happy about it. Isn't it a good thing that you are staying in Hanseong instead of going far away? However, there was a real reason Kim Jiam's wife liked it. If Kim Jiam left for a foreign country, the most likely position for him would be the governor of Pyongan province. And the place where the governor of Pyongan province stayed was Pyongyang, famous for its colorful hometown. In any case, after being retained as the minister of Hojo, Kim Jiam's daily life, which had been just watching Hojo's work, was completely turned upside down when Hyang was appointed as the crown prince. It was quite meaningful for Wonwon to be installed as crown prince. This was because becoming a crown prince would give him some say, no matter how young he was. In that sense, the installation of crown prince of Hyang was the beginning of a nightmare for the ministers. Kim Jiam muttered while glaring at the gold pen in his hand. It all started because of this guy. This was because, as the production of gold pencils was entrusted to the private sector, the amount and intensity of work to be undertaken by Hojo began to increase rapidly. Haha, it was good at first. When he heard that it would be entrusted to the private sector, Kim felt good. In his opinion, the gold pen was indeed an item of great use. It was easier to maintain than a brush and had a reasonable lifespan. Above all, even if it was only a grade 2 silver pen, it was cheaper than a regular brush. Because of this, competition would be fierce to become a company that produces this gold pen, and it was certain that he would also receive a handsome gift. I didn't know the Crown Prince was really fucking smart. The Crown Prince, who requested authority to produce gold pens by begging the chief minister, created a truly absurd system. It was called open bidding. According to the Crown Prince's order, the specifications of the gold pen were delivered to the merchants who submitted the bid. Under this system, merchants had to write down the price of how much they could produce and publicly review it under the observation of the Crown Prince. It was the moment when the gift Kim Jiam had expected flew away. The Crown Prince handed out a piece of paper to Judge Hojo, Judge Champion, and Chamui, who were in charge of the review. Please remove all items listed below this price. What is this price? This is the production unit price that the craftsmen of the military encyclopedia used to produce gold pens. It is an average price that includes not only the material cost, but also the wages of public figures. Therefore, be sure to exclude any items that are cheaper than this amount. Kim Jiam raised a question about Hyang's words. Isn't it good if it's cheap? Judge Hojo's words filled my tongue. The materials for the gold pens made by the Gunjagam were all purchased through public donations, so if you look at the unit price alone, it is difficult to come up with a price lower than that. But do you think it is possible to make it at a cheaper price than that? There's definitely going to be trouble. Furthermore, the golden pen at the top of the selection will be stamped with the Yua pattern to signify that the country has recognized its quality. But, is there a problem with the quality of such items? Do you think the people will trust the country? Here comes the emperor. Kim Jiam had to bow his head at Hyang's command. Hyang's grumbles came into Kim Jiam's ears as he lowered his head. How on earth is a man who is said to be the leader of a country so short-thinking? That's how Kim Jiam's hardships began, starting with Jimpil. In a way, among the ministers, It was Hopan who first began to be harassed by King Sejong and Hyang. Hopan's hardships became more intense with the nationwide implementation of cowpox vaccination. In the process of implementing cowpox vaccination, the family registers of the 8 provinces of Joseon were reorganized, and the first batch of the reorganized family register was sent to King Sejong. And when King Sejong saw that shame, he issued a displeasing order to the ministers. The last time family registers were compiled was just 2 years ago, and the population has increased so much in just 2 years? Can the ministers believe this? Here comes the emperor. I told you not to do anything embarrassing. King Sejong shouted loudly, but the ministers had nothing to say. Joseon compiled family registers every 3 years. The family registers organized in this way were made in 3 copies. One copy was sent to the relevant county/Hyeon. Another copy was sent to the Hojo, and the last copy was sent to the Gamyeong of each region. However, looking at the household registration number recorded in this family register, when Joseon was just founded, 1392, the population of Joseon was only about 300,000 people. Afterwards, the population of Joseon began to increase rapidly as refugees were constantly resettled and household surveys were vigorously conducted. And, according to a household survey conducted 2 years ago, the population of Joseon was about 1.9 million. However, the population of Joseon confirmed through the recent cowpox vaccination was about 4.3 million. Tell me, have the people of this Joseon dynasty not worked and given birth to children for the past 2 years? Is it possible for the population to increase by over 2 million in just 2 years? Here comes the emperor. I told you not to do anything embarrassing. In response to King Sejong's roar, the ministers had no choice but to continue to bow their heads. However, both King Sejong and the ministers knew why this happened. This was because both local administrative organizations and the people benefited greatly from avoiding the burden of taxes, especially public contributions. The people were able to relieve the burden of public contributions, and local administrators were able to properly fill their pockets. King Sejong could not hold back his anger and scolded his ministers with a red face. When Joseon was founded, taxes were reduced because the people were small and the nobles were devastated by exploitation. With less income coming in, it was natural to spend less, which is why the royal family and ministers' salaries were greatly reduced compared to the previous dynasty. But look, the actual population is so large, but the population recorded in the family register is less than half. The country is receiving less taxes, but the people are still living in poverty. So where has all the wealth gone? Why aren't you saying anything? Isn't it obvious? If not the nobleman, then who else is there? The very nobleman that the magistrates protect so much. Here comes the emperor. Sejong gritted his teeth. The country is in such shambles right now, but the noblemen are innocent? You damn bastards. King Sejong's arrows were aimed at the purged ministers. The ministers who heard King Sejong's roar clicked their tongues. It will be difficult for them to be released from exile for a while. Considering his age, he was likely to be released from exile before he died. Woda. King Sejong took a long deep breath to calm his anger and gave orders to his ministers. Make an accurate family register and land register right away. I follow your orders. The governor took into account the hard work of the officials and included the realization of the nakbong in the official's book. However, do you think there is a need to show such favor when working in this way? Here comes the emperor. I will do my best to handle it. King Sejong showed a cold reaction to the minister's answers. Let's see. As King Sejong's command fell, the thing that became most urgent was Hojo. This was because both the family register and the land register were under the jurisdiction of the Hojo. Kim Jiam gathered the officials under his command and delivered his command. Therefore, both the family register and the land register must be increased. Let's all do our best. Chief Panther. However, the workload is still too much. When one of the officials under his command protested, Kim Jiam screamed. Then use the resignation letter. I know someone is doing this because they like it. They're doing it because they like it. Hearing Kim Jiam shouting, all of Hojo's officials became quiet and only looked at Kim Jiam's thoughts. If you have any complaints, screw the local officials who did a terrible job. First, find out where the population has increased the most compared to 2 years ago and report it. 15 days later, Kim Jiam submitted a scroll to King Sejong. Something? While organizing the family register, I came across a list of towns with strangely increased populations. Where are 1 or 2 towns like that? That's true, but this place is particularly severe. In response to Kim Jiam's answer, King Sejong opened the scroll and read its contents. Sejong, who read the contents carefully, frowned. This is a bit harsh. There were a total of 12 towns listed in the scroll, and the population increased from a minimum of 5 times to a maximum of 8 times. King Sejong, who had been looking at the list with a frown on his face, looked back at the merchant ship. Sing the Great Sahian. Yes, Your Majesty. Under King Sejong's order, the doctors and generals of the Sahianbu headed to 12 towns. The officials who arrived in the town robbed local officials, subordinates, and their immediate superiors, and as a result, 26 former and current local officials and 40 subordinates were dismissed and exiled. Kim Jiam and other Hojo officials took their anger out on their anger, but it wasn't long before they were rewarded for it. Here we come again. Also, hearing the report from his subordinate official, Kim Jiam held the back of his neck, which was becoming stiff. Where is this time? This is Gwangjamak, Jeollado. Damn, Kim Jiam swore. As local officials faced a crisis due to irregularities in the family register, other local officials desperately came up with countermeasures to avoid the sharp end of the situation. They compiled a statement of reasons by going through all the records they had left, including those left by their predecessors. The basis for population increase was created by checking the number of refugees who succeeded in settling down, the children of those refugees, and, although rare, the number of slaves who were exempted and became civilians. Books that meticulously recorded the amount of land that had been expanded by reclaiming wasteland, and its current owners were flooding in every day. From Hojo's point of view, after he vented his anger, things multiplied several times. Hee. Ha 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 ha. Looking at the books piling up like that, the officials of Kim Jiam and Hojo couldn't help but let out empty smiles with lost expressions. While the work was piling up, Hojo was given another task: creation of a national organization responsible for the monopoly of candy and salt. I really have to file a resignation letter. If this continues, everyone will die. You die this way, you die that way. When all of Hojo's officials, starting with Kim Jiam, were making a solemn decision, Hwang Hee suggested to King Sejong on their behalf reinforcement of manpower through the past. In response to Hwang Hee's suggestion, Kiang submitted a plan to hire Sukyeongkwan students due to time and cost issues, and King Sejong accepted this. All of Hojo's officials cheered when they heard the news that Hojo's personnel will be replaced by Sukyeongkwan students. Your Majesty the Lord, live forever. 1,000 years old. Okay. Then, just try a little harder. Yes, Captain. As Kim Jiam consoled himself, Hojo's officials once again gained energy and went to work. However, some officials were too energetic. What? My incendiary. Kim Jiam, who was processing the mountain of reports, was shocked. Kim Jiam, who got up from his seat, asked Hojo Champion. Who? Where? When? 3 days ago. Bring those damn bastards in now. After a while, the officials who had performed the Mayan Sinri were brought to the front of Kim Jiam in a row. How many people? There are 23 people coming. There are so many. Kim Jiam shouted at the officials standing in front of him. You either have a mind or you don't. You are a Mayan Sinri. Why are you a Mayan Sinri? I'm sorry. However, the Mayan Sinri ceremony is a tradition. You damn squires. Everything that everyone has forbidden for generations is Mayan Sinri. Especially, it was only a year ago that the chief minister of Tangium punished Mayan Sinri. What? Ultong. You're talking like tradition. Song, I apologize. How are we going to solve this? The Sahianbu minions are already excited and writing appeals. How are we going to solve this? I'm sorry. If you're going to apologize, you shouldn't have done what you need to apologize for. Go home right now and get disciplined. Yes. In response to Kim Jiam's shouting, the officials in question began to hesitate and leave Kim Jiam's room. Kim Jiam, whose clothes were ripped off, screamed at the sight. Are you wearing shackles on your feet? Get out of there now. Yes, old. Just as Kim Jiam had worried, King Sejong became furious after receiving the report. Kang made a suggestion to King Sejong, who looked as if he would be sentenced to death at any moment. At Kang's suggestion, King Sejong immediately executed the sentence. It was a document organization type. Even if half of the Hojo officials were involved, the punishment was to complete the family register and land register within 1 year, which would have taken 5 years. If it was not completed within 1 year, an additional punishment of exile awaited. Thanks to this, the officials in question could not even enter the house and had to settle for room and board in the newly built library next to the Hojo government office. Although the number of personnel was increased, the workload that Hojo had to handle increased several times. So everyone from the Kim branch to the lowest officials were always overworked. In the end, King Sejong, who could not see this, ordered Surigan to eat fish food. To be precise, it was a banquet disguised as fish food. King Sejong, who prepared a banquet for the Hojo officials, encouraged the officials in attendance. I know very well that the work of the officers is hard. However, in order for the life of this Joseon to run properly, there must be good cooperation. So I have no choice but to hope that the officers will put in a little more effort. As the life of this Joseon improves, we will increase the number of personnel. I hope you will be patient a little longer and give me strength. I am devastated. In response to King Sejong's words of encouragement, all the officials bowed and expressed their gratitude. In this process, a new proverb emerged. It was called the day to receive a good fish meal. It was a proverb that compared treating someone well before asking them to do difficult work. Meanwhile, King Sejong handed a bag of medicine to Kim Jiam through a merchant ship. I ordered the doctor to prepare a medicine that is good for your body. Please take good care of it. I am devastated. It contains a lot of precious medicinal ingredients, so it will be of great help to you. I am devastated. Although he kept saying thank you, Kim Jiam heard King Sejong's words like this. I have to pay for the medicine, right? 7th year of King Sejong's reign, 1425, Yulsi year. The past was carried out. Because it was not a food year ending in Hal, Lon, Wu, Yo, it was a separate poem targeting only civil affairs and military affairs. Unlike the original history, this past was different in many ways, and the reason was simple. There are not enough officials. There are not enough people to run. As new positions and systems were created for both the professional and non-professional classes, a large number of manpower was needed. Accordingly, King Sejong issued an order to the observers who would conduct the first poem. In the case of the first entrance exam to the liberal arts department, the Jinsabwa shall not be administered, and only the Sangwonhwa shall be administered. For the number of successful applicants, add 50% to the combined number of successful applicants from the existing Jinsasi and Sangwonsi exams. The observers who received the teaching leaflet containing the famous names tilted their heads, but according to the famous names, they took the Sangwonsi and selected the successful candidates. As soon as the selection was completed, a record containing the personal information of those who passed the initial exam was sent to the capital. Soja, I passed the exam. Oh, this is the family's honor. We must have a feast. As the number of successful candidates increased compared to before, parties were held in many towns across the country to celebrate passing the exam. There are a total of 162 local administrative agencies in Joseon, including at the county level, and in the past, the number of successful applicants through local examinations was 140. As a result, on average, about 50 towns failed to produce successful applicants. However, this time, 220 people passed the exam. As a result, there were only 11 towns in all 8 provinces of Joseon that did not have successful applicants. The bomb houses in that town were turned upside down. What on earth did you do with your child's education? Shame, shame. Where in the world is there such a shame? In March, those who passed the initial exam came to Hanseong to take the double exam. Scholars and commoners, accompanied by slaves carrying rice or dry goods, or carrying the burden themselves, flocked up to Hanseong and looked for a place to stay and eat. Those who had no relatives in Hanseong requested room and board in houses that seemed decent, or unpacked their belongings at temporary lodging establishments created by their superiors. Meanwhile, those who had wealthy relatives in Hanseong found their relatives and found accommodations. Has your uncle left the house yet? You're late every day these days. Okay. In a neat hanok in Bukshan, a representative noble residence north of Jonggak, a young man from the countryside was having a conversation with an older woman. As the conversation continued about thoughts about the past and various personal matters, the slave spoke to his wife. Your Majesty has withdrawn. I understand. Upon hearing that the landlord had moved out, the wife and the young man quickly got up from their seats. That day, the landlord and the young man met over drinks in Sarangji's main hall and continued their conversation. Okay, are you confident about your double vision? I plan to do my best. I guess that's the truth. So, the wedding ceremony took place? Yes. What about your children? I have 2 sons and 1 daughter. In response to the young man's answer, the landlord muttered softly. Fortunately, the line won't be cut off. I don't know who it is, but I can operate comfortably. I'm sorry, but I couldn't hear you properly. Talking to myself. The landlord waved his hand and changed the topic. As you know, The number of successful candidates has increased in this year's primary exam. The number of successful candidates in the double exam will also increase significantly. Is that so? The landlord, seeing the young man's relaxed face, warned him. It's not something to be happy about. Now, it means that it's not a matter of passing the box exam, but what happens after that. If I were to give you one last piece of advice, you would probably feel like submitting your resignation 12 times a day. If you endure that, you will be able to get ahead in life. I am prepared for my Sinri. The landlord burst out laughing at the young man's answer. Put, Mayan Sinri? Is there a great squire who would do that? As soon as he does it, he will live and experience hell. Well, even if I told you, you wouldn't know, so you will know when you experience it. Yes? Yes. The landlord, who thought the conversation was roughly over, got up and left. Your seat will be ready. First, relax from your travels and clear your mind. And good luck. Thank you. 3 days later, double vision developed. After passing through Gunjeonman, seats were spread out in the wide space in front of Junjeongjin, and candidates who went through the identity verification process entered one by one and took their seats. Your Majesty, please give it to me. All test takers sitting in their seats stood up and bowed their heads. Eventually, when King Sejong, Kiang, and the ministers came in and took their seats, the candidates bowed deeply to King Sejong. When King Sejong responded, he stood up and stepped forward, and the waiting eunuchs brought the loudspeaker that Hiang had previously made and installed it. King Sejong, standing in front of a loudspeaker, gave words of encouragement to the candidates. Therefore, what Joseon needs most in order to expand its grandeur is talented people. We sincerely hope that you are such talented people. I will do my best. After Sejong's encouraging speech, a warning against cheating followed. Lastly, guidance on the application process followed. So, candidates will be tested twice. The first will be on the scriptures, and the second will be on arithmetic. Arithmetic? Why arithmetic? As unexpected subjects were added, test takers tilted their heads and muttered, "Quiet." All of this is being implemented by gathering the opinions of His Majesty the Prime Minister and the ministers in order to select talented people. So do not doubt. If you cannot get rid of your doubts, leave the examination hall immediately. The murmur of the test tube died down in an instant. Then the test begins. In this way, the first test, which tested the understanding of the 4 books and Pentateuch, was completed, and the second test, a test on arithmetic, was conducted. The second test was unusual from the start, as government officials distributed test sheets with printed questions to each test taker. Don't forget to write your name and origin at the top. Then let's get started. After the test was over, the candidates left the section one by one, and from then on, a war between subjects began. Let's see. Can this be interpreted like this? While the officials in charge of grading the first test, which measures the ability to understand the 4 books and 5 classics, were in a somewhat relaxed mood, those grading arithmetic skills were in a violent mood. There, officials from the 6th Division of the government and officials from the Research Institute gathered and fought fiercely to grade exam papers. Let's see, the score is, hey, why are you taking out that test paper? It's already a scam. Protect the morning clothes. The morning clothes. It was such a bloody atmosphere that if I had had a knife in my hand, I would have been dead in about 4 days already. The work started with an exchange of opinions about the upcoming star poem. Soja, I have a request from Abima. Jean. The nobles and ministers became very nervous as soon as the word Chong was mentioned. Tell me. Yes, Abima. Please add one more subject to this upcoming small and medium-sized examination. In response to Hiang's request, King Sejong stroked his beard and expressed doubt. Please increase the number of subjects on the test. What subjects do you want to include? Here comes the arithmetic. Arithmetic? Yes, there is a shortage of administrators at the institute. So, I would like to hire those who are good at arithmetic among those who are taking the exam for double vision in the small department. Why Sabuna? This is because those who are taking the entrance exam are talented people who have been passed over once, so they're the talents that Abima needs even more. Hearing Hiang's words, King Sejong stroked his beard and was lost in thought. There was a positive feeling on Sejong's expression as he silently pondered. Your Majesty, Hojo also needs people who are good at arithmetic. Not wanting to miss the opportunity, Judge Hojo came forward and demanded additional manpower. King Sejong expressed doubts about Hojo Judge's request. Didn't Hojo replenish his staff some time ago? Your Majesty, that number of people is barely enough to urinate on your feet. Not only. Is there not enough staff to spread out across the country, but it is also not enough to conduct a local survey on price trends? Is that so? Your Highness, we also need cooperation. The same goes for Byongjo. Hyangjo also has a lot of people. Ijo too. Judge Hojo's petition broke the dam. The moment Yejo was about to open his mouth, Huang He intervened. Why on earth do you need so many people? In the case of public cooperation, the officials work all night long just to organize the status of new construction and repairs of embankments, weirs, and bridges across the country. In addition, in order to conduct research on the Comprehensive National Development Plan, arithmetic is required. We need people skilled in this. The same goes for military personnel. In order to organize each branch's weapons and military records, we need people who are good at writing and arithmetic. The same goes for criminal investigation. We need people who are good at arithmetic to investigate and organize the number and types of crimes occurring throughout Joseon. The judges of each group fervently argued why additional manpower was needed. This is it. Everyone has a point. King Sejong, who was muttering with an embarrassed expression, looked back at the ministers. Is there such a shortage of people in Joseon? In response to King Sejong's question, Huang He answered the reason. It's not a lack of people, it's a lack of budget. In response to Huang He's answer, Sejong swore without even realizing it. Holy shit. Meanwhile, the editors were arguing fiercely with each other. Hojo is not fully staffed yet. Man, people need to have a conscience. There are already a lot of people for Byongjo and Hyangjo. So why are you saying there aren't enough people? What if there are too many people? Most of them are illiterate. They only know how to cut with a knife. So they think they know how to do paperwork. Come to think of it, why does the rights need people? Why do rights do arithmetic? The judges of Group 6 started a war of words, using harsh words with each other. The captain's parents are like the captain. Conflict. When the war of words went too far and reached the point of personal slander by asking about the other person's parents' well-being, Sejong ended the argument by shouting. Sejong clicked his tongue as he looked at the ministers who suddenly became quiet. SK, they're doing well. By the way, they're doing well da. Here comes the emperor. At King Sejong's words, all the ministers bowed down and bowed their heads. Sejong, who was watching this, glared at his scent. Anyway, you bastard. King, who suddenly got hit by a stray bullet, had to bow his head like the ministers. Here comes the emperor. That's it. How many people need me? At least 20. Can't we fill the position through reporting? Because the level of talent is different. Sejong clicked his tongue at Hyang's answer. It was because I understood the saying, there is a difference between grades. Because it meant that if you can at least take a small exam, you are somewhat smart. No matter what, it is a clear fact that there is a shortage of people. However, there is a budget problem. Sejong, who was sorting out the situation, asked the ministers, how long did the National Resource Agency say we would have to wait to mine gold and silver from the gold and silver mines discovered? They say it takes at least half a year. However, it will take at most a year to get the right results after refining. After hearing the answer, Sejong began to calculate in his mind. Taxes collected from the superiors. If this is a message coming from a reseller. After adding and subtracting for a while, Sejong came to a conclusion. Crown, did you say you need 20? Yes, Abama. You must be at least 20. Reduced to heat. I follow your orders. Sejong began to adjust personnel, starting with the fragrance. We will increase the number of successful applicants for this small group. And, as requested by the Crown Prince, we will also take an arithmetic test. The officers will coordinate the necessary people for each group and report to the person in charge. Just now, the person in charge has reduced the Crown Prince's request by half. The officers will also do their own thing. I hope to achieve reconciliation through concessions, rather than just thinking about satisfying my greed. I follow your orders. And the result was the bloody battle of wits that is taking place now. The lottery is over. Let's see. It's sorted by grade, right? That's right. In response to the judge's answer, Zhang Cho silently selected 10 pieces from the top and stood up. At that very moment, Hojo Champion grabbed his sleeve. For a moment. Why are you doing this? The captain has no intention of sympathizing with us. What are we going to do if we take only the smartest guys with us? This guy. The captain has no conscience. The lab needs someone who is good at arithmetic. That goes for all of us. That's right, Captain Zhang. Now that I've seen you, I see that you're a terrible person. The judging room was instantly filled with voices denouncing the beginning of the new year. However, Zhang Chu did not back down. It's an order from His Majesty the Crown Prince. Zhang Chu named the Crown Prince, but other officials did not back down. The representative was Hojo Champion. You have forgotten His Majesty's command. He told you not to satisfy your own greed. Where are you doing something blasphemous? Move. Give up your greed. Tisk. Zhang Chu clicked his tongue. Those gathered here now were all of the champion rank. Neither their experience nor their age were people whom Zhang Chu could push around at will. In the end, Zhang Chu proposed the next best solution. I will take 5 from the top and 5 from the average. Shouldn't I also follow the Crown Prince's orders? The panelists, who were grumbling at the end of the new year, came up with a compromise. 4 from the top. Shouldn't we take 1 out of the top 10? Zhang Chu, who had been pondering the compromise plan of the Hojo panel for a while, nodded. Let's do that. Zhang Chu came out inside. Phew. What you said was correct. Before coming here, the village summoned Zhang Chu and came up with a plan. It would be nice to get all 10 people with the best grades, but that would be impossible. That's right. So, I thought about it. The strategy that the Sent came up with was to just stick to what was in the beginning. Naturally, there would be a backlash, and from then on, the plan was to secure as many talents as possible while reducing them little by little and making a show of condescension. 5 days after the obstetrics double vision, there was an announcement of the candidates who passed the state exam. Near Guangwoman, past test takers gathered and waited for the results to come out. Have you got the list yet? Hey, get your head off. Amidst a slight commotion among the nervous test takers, the side door of Guangwoman opened and officials and courtiers came out. When the officials came out of Guangwoman, the noise of the test takers subsided. The test takers only swallowed their saliva and rolled their eyes. The official plastered the large bulletin board on one side of the wall next to Guangwoman and put up a poster. This is a list of those who passed the state examination. When the list of candidates who passed the exam was posted, test takers hurriedly ran to the bulletin board to check if their names were there. There is. I have one too. Haha, I'm passing the exam. While some people cheered after seeing their names, there were also others who expressed their anger at failing. You're falling again. What should I tell my parents? The courtiers reappeared and set up a small podium in front of those who were happy, angry, and sad. When the podium was created, an official wearing a dark blue uniform climbed up on the podium, held an object that looked like a funnel to his mouth, and shouted, Li Sunji. There is this Sunji. Suunji Li from Yangxiang, Jiangyi-do, currently Anxiang, Jiangyi-do. At the official's shout, one of the test takers, a young man who must have just turned 20, ran forward. That's me. Are you Sunji Li? From Yangxiang, Jiangyi-do. You're right. What year were you born? Yuli Union is coming. In response to Li Sunji's response, the official checked the records. Li Sunji, Yang, Yul Union. That's right. Stand next to me. Yes? Yes. The official who placed Li Sunji next to him called 9 more people. Let's see 1, 2, Sui, Yu Tin. They're all correct. You guys follow me? Yes? Yes. Surrounded by such doubts, Li Sunji and the 9 other people who passed the state exam followed the official and entered Jiangbakong Palace. What are those people? Look, execution place. Do you know anything? I don't know either. While the candidates were buzzing, an official wearing a blue uniform came up to the podium. Quiet, quiet, quiet. At the official's shout, the gathered test takers became quiet. The official put an object similar to a courtesy funnel to his mouth and shouted, Those who passed the exam, please move to the right and go through the verification process. And for those who failed, try for the next opportunity. According to the official's order, the candidates divided into 2 groups and moved. Those who passed the exam moved to a location on the right side of Guangwoman and began the verification process, while those who failed turned around in frustration. Meanwhile, in the episode, the conversation between King Sejong and the ministers continued on the topic of this small event. How many people have passed the exam in this department? A total of 185 people are coming. 185 people? Rather, the number of people passing the exam has decreased. Huang He answered King Sejong's question. Those who passed the test on the scriptures, but failed the arithmetic test were all failed. What are the criteria for incompetence in arithmetic? These are the people who scored 20 points below the average. These are talented people who passed the local examination. But isn't it a bit of a waste? In response to King Sejong's question, Huang He explained the reason. That is true, but it takes too much time and money to educate students from the basics of industry and academia and then put them into work. Is it? Okay, these are talented people who have been carefully selected for national administration, so we must utilize them as best as possible. The ministers all bowed their heads at King Sejong's request. I follow your orders. Aside from the selection process, what will we do with those who have completed their training? What is your rank? Like the last Sukkyungkwan Confucian students, we plan to divide students into grades based on their academic performance in industry and academia, and distribute them appropriately to each of the 6 groups after a 3-month probationary period. It's okay, but what will we do if there are people who claim to go to Sukkyungkwan? Even if you pass through Sukkyungkwan and Daegwa, unless you are a Jangwon, you start at the 9th grade. If they have an idea, they will realize that it is much more advantageous than being at Sukkyungkwan. Right? Sejong nodded at Hwang Hee's answer. Watching Sejong's reaction, Hwang Hee continued her explanation. Because Sukkyungkwan's future work is changing, we plan to expel all of our students at this time. Sejong burst into laughter at Hwang Hee's words. Heh, if you try to take it easy, you'll end up like a dog chasing a chicken. Similar stories also emerged when explaining the situation to test takers. So, you will be put to work after completing the course. As soon as the official's explanation was over, one of the test takers raised his hand. So-sing is aiming for Daegwa. Isn't it possible to enter Sukkyungkwan? The official who was asked the question gave a short answer. No. Sukkyungkwan's work has changed starting this year. Sukkyungkwan will only hold ceremonies for the Temple of Literature and educate candidates who will be appointed as high-ranking officials. Oh, and speaking of which, the qualifications for taking the major exam will also change. To put it simply, if you want to become a party official, you have to become an official. The official gave a simple explanation, but the reality was not simple at all. In order to become a high-ranking government official or higher, one had to take another appointment examination. And in order to take the appointment exam, you had to prove your ability at work. However, the reason why the official did not explain this in detail was simple. The one with the yellow buds should be pulled out in the first place. Those in front of him now, and those who would continue to come in the future were his subordinates and potential competitors. Even when competing, in order to be comfortable right now, I had to pick guys I could beat. After the official's explanation was over, the person who had taken the civil service exam raised his hand again. Can't I just go back to school, study, and then take the university entrance exam? At those words, the official who was explaining the story screamed. You stupid bastard! Did you hear or eat what I just described? What did I say? Didn't you say that Daegwa's personality has changed? What kind of explanation did you get? And now you're talking nonsense. You, get out. If you're expelled, failed. You stupid bastard. The person who had passed the exam in question screamed at the official's words. But, this guy. Know who I am. Who are you? The person who served as the former Minister of Public Works is my great-uncle, and the person who currently serves as the second lieutenant of the royal family is my cousin. The official snorted at his words. Joy. In the end, you are nothing and nothing. What? The person who was suddenly treated as trash got angry, but the official gave an order to the official next to him. Please go to Sehyeonbu and bring the Song family. If you ask who sent it, you will know that it was General Kang of the Joseon dynasty who sent it. At General Kang's words, the official who was present nodded and stood up. The official got up from his seat, glared at the person who had passed the exam, and went outside. Meanwhile, the test taker who was boasting about his backside turned pale as soon as the word Sehyeonbu came out. Seeing the person who had passed the state exam like that, General Kang raised his voice. Where is this thing showing off its behind? You bastard! Do you think I can expel you at will? It's all a joke. Okay, my successor is His Majesty the Lord. Where is this rotten guy showing off his behind? In the end, the test taker who caused the uproar was expelled and failed. Forgive me just once. The test taker who was expelled asked for forgiveness as he was dragged away, but the officials remained steadfast. After a brief commotion, General Kang warned the frozen test takers. During the industrial academia training period, if you have behavioral problems, are unable to keep up with your tasks, or cause trouble, you will be expelled immediately. Don't forget this. Do you understand? Ancient. Those who passed the exam answered loudly. Meanwhile, the Sehyeonbu immediately wrote an appeal and submitted it to King Sejong. King Sejong, who received the appeal, immediately ordered punishment. The reason that a person who had just passed the state entrance exam was so arrogant was because I firmly believed in what he said. When Gwaine reads the appeal, he is reminded of what happened with Ryu Jonghyun in the past and feels truly devastated. Here comes the emperor. At King Sejong's words, All the ministers bowed their heads. King Sejong's words continued over the heads of those ministers. If you commit evil against a government official, I think you will know without even looking at the evil that those behind him have committed. The Yongwijing orders the Wigumbu to investigate the relatives mentioned by this person and determine the crime committed. I follow your orders. According to the Wigumbu's investigation, a former official of the Ministry of Public Works had all his public records taken away, and a person who worked in the Ministry of Public Works was demoted to volunteer and then sentenced to document purification. While this was happening outside, Suunji Lee and his party were also in confusion. Where are the students going now? As we passed through the gates of Jiangbagong Palace and continued heading deeper into the palace, Lee Sunji asked a question to the official walking ahead in a voice full of fear. The official who was walking ahead of Lee Sunji's question gave a short answer. It's Dong Gungjin. Hi. As soon as they heard the word East Palace, Lee Sunji and the other people who passed the state exam were shocked. They were heading to the place where the next heir to the throne was. The official who was ahead of him smiled as he saw Lee Sunji and his group tense up. Relax. If anyone sees you, they'll think you're entering a hogel. Yes. Yes. Looking at the faces of Lee Sunji and his companions who were still unable to relax, the official turned his back and muttered softly. Would it be better to be a hogel? Come on. Welcome. He says he is Zhang Cho, who holds the position of Deputy Director of the Research Institute. It was Zhang Cho who welcomed Lee Sunji and his party. First of all, Zhang Cho delivered an apology. Originally, His Majesty the Crown Prince would have welcomed you, but now that Area 51 is busy, he has decided to welcome you. I'm sorry. Oh, no. As Zhang Cho bowed his head, Lee Sunji and his party urgently bowed their heads. Now, please sit down first. When Zhang Cho offered them a seat, Lee Sunji and his party sat down on the chairs. Zhang Cho smiled bitterly as he looked at the faces of Lee Sunji and his companions, who were sitting on chairs in a frozen position and looking only at him. When I think about the hardships these friends have gone through, I feel sorry for them all. Greatness. After clearing his expression with a light cough, Zhang Cho got to the point. I will tell you what you will do next. First of all, is there anyone who knows Chanchiksu? In response to Jianko's question, Lee Sunji quickly raised her hand. Who? I understand that Chanchiksu hasn't spread much yet. How did you know? I saw it used by a shopkeeper who often visits my home. Is it? As for the others, you're on your own. Then, what is your name? My name is Suunji Lee, who came from Yangseon. Yes, this member will learn Chanchiksu with other members as a way of reviewing. All right. Once Chanchiksu studies are over, you will learn industry and academia. And Yida. New Year's Day taught us what we need to learn and do in the future. After completing the explanation, Zhang Cho concluded as follows. First, you will be given a month and a half to return to your hometown and let them know that you passed the exam. Take care of your household and return to Hanseong. I hope to see you then. The Crown Prince has high expectations, and I also have high expectations from you all. I will do my best. After 1 month and 15 days, Suunji Lee and the other students all went to work at the research center. Nice to meet you. The Cent warmly welcomed the new employees. If the existing people were attracted through evaluations around the complex, the 10 people in front of them were people secured through direct evaluation. I believe you will achieve great things. All the new researchers responded with loud voices to Hyang's words, which were full of expectation and trust. I will give you my name. And it took less than 15 days for the shouts to turn into cries. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die, Brother Song. Did you work overtime yesterday too? I haven't been able to go home for 5 days already. I'm worried that I'll end up being naive like this. During a short break, new researchers gathered in the break room, massaged their necks and shoulders, and complained about the hardships of their work. At least the green bonus comes out well. It is said that those assigned to Group 6 are still dying because they are doing on-the-job training. They say they are dying because they are evaluated every day. This is it. Are we the lucky ones, or are they the lucky ones? Sunji Lee was passing in front of the people who were talking about other people who had passed the state exam and were suffering endlessly as probationary officials after receiving a temporary rank. Lee Sunji's face was full of vitality as she walked with books in her arms. All the new researchers who saw this complained. This student has met his true calling. That's right. Even when Suunji Lee was studying to prepare for the civil service exam in her hometown, she enjoyed solving arithmetic problems for a little entertainment, more than memorizing Confucian scriptures. His talent was such that his parents were seriously concerned. Master, how about having us cover Suunji? Reporting? I'll pretend I didn't listen to that. Even if you pass the interview, will it only be a cosmetic issue? There is family prestige. Even if you go through the minor and major departments, you need a family background to become a Tangsangjang or higher. Does our family have that kind of power? A risk. And do you think our Suanji is that kind of a bitch? Kuhum. That's true, but Lee Sunji's father was speechless. He also knew his son's academic ability to some extent. Confucianism, an essential element for the advancement of the noble class, was widely used, but industry and academia were unique. The problem was Lee Sunji's personality. He liked to laugh and was easygoing, but he also had a sharp tongue that could silence others or turn them into enemies with just a few words. The biggest problem my father thought was that harsh language. Even if I achieve great success, I will create a storm with that tongue. In the end, Sunji Lee's parents reached a tentative agreement. There will be a small fruit soon, so let's see the results and decide. And when Lee Sunji, who returned from the small exam, announced that she had passed the small exam and was accepted into an institution directly under the crown, Lee Sunji's parents went into an uproar. Catch all the cows in the village. Catch pigs, catch chickens, catch everything you can. A big event has happened to our family. It's a feast. Yes. For a moment. Relatives and friends who rushed to Lee Sunji after hearing the news that an accident occurred at Lee Sunji's house came to stop Lee Sunji's father when he ran away. I will kill cows, I will kill pigs, and I will also kill pillar roots. I know it's a slope, but I'm overdoing it. Is this a normal slope? Our son. I went right under the crown prince. What if we grab the roots of the pillars? It's a good thing to be right below the crown prince's lower level, but isn't it a bad start? Also, shouldn't Suanji and his wife also think about the wealth they will use to live in Hanseong? It's already going to be a very low salary, so is it going to make people tremble in the dark? Huh? I see. Lee Sunji's father came to his senses after receiving advice from a relative. So, although it was smaller than expected, a fairly large feast was held. It was such a feast that even the local magistrate in charge of Yangseong came to offer congratulations. As soon as she took a position at the research institute, Suanji Lee demonstrated her talent. I passed the beginner-level industry academia course in just 10 days, the intermediate-level industry academia course in just 1 month, and the advanced industry academia class taught by Congregationalists in 2 months. Kiang, who received the new students' industrial academic education report cards, exchanged opinions with Zhang Cho and Zhang Enji. I would like to give Lee Sunji the rank of Zhang 5th rank, but he just passed the small department. It doesn't matter to us, but words may come from other parts of the court. Zhang Cho and Zhang Enji expressed concern about Hyang's opinion, but Hyang shook his head. If you have skills, you should be treated accordingly. You are right, but if that's the case, I have nothing to say. Zhang Cho and Zhang Enji agreed to Hyang's argument, because they also received something. In the last audit, the two were recognized for their contributions and were promoted to Zhanghyun Debu of the 2nd class and Zhanghyun Debu of the 2nd class. There was no change in rank, but the rank was raised. They were not the only ones who received such benefits. Among the institute's officials, those of low rank were raised in rank, and those above the rank of Dangjang were promoted to official positions. These benefits also went to the craftsmen who worked together. Zhang Yangsil's rank was changed from Bailjua to Zhangrang. Song Moon is devastated. When Zhang Yangsil heard that her rank had been changed from Bailjua to Zhangrang, she shed tears and thanked King Sejong and Hyang. It was a miraculous thing to rise from the status of a slave to a Bailjua, but it had a different meaning to change from a Bailjua, which was a Miraquan, Wulugan, without a Nakban, to a Zhangrang where a Nakban was actually given. Zhang Yangsil was not the only one in trouble. The craftsmen of the Military Flag Inspectorate, including the late field commander, also had changes in rank and department. They moved to positions directly under the Research Institute. In the process of moving, senior craftsmen such as the late Yejong rose in rank from champion to volunteer. I am devastated. I will dedicate my entire name to you. The craftsmen, like Zhang Yangsil, shed tears and expressed their gratitude upon hearing that their rank had improved. This was because in Joseon society, where class discrimination existed between business, agriculture, and industry, they were treated as inferior to farmers and were able to rise in status by being called sire. What made them especially thrilled was that King Sejong himself bestowed upon them a newly elevated rank. This was Hyang's work. What would it be like for Abama to personally congratulate them? If Abamama personally congratulates them, they will have hope and will be absolutely loyal to Abamama. Sejong was lost and fought at Hyang's words. What Hyang said was a very good opinion. Now, the noblemen were standing between themselves and the people of the same low class as them. For a king like Sejong, noblemen were a double-edged sword. They were the king's strong supporters, but at the same time, they were the ones who tied the king's hands and feet. Sejong thought for a moment and came to a conclusion. You are right. Therefore, King Sejong personally summoned Jang Yong-sil and her craftsmen and personally gave them direct concubines and encouraged them. The reason Gwaine has given you the direct concubines like this is to praise the merits you have accumulated so far and at the same time warn you. As your rank goes up, your responsibilities also increase. Don't forget this and do your best. I will keep in mind this solemn commandment. I will do my best. As King Sejong listened to the answers from the tear-filled craftsman, a face full of pride appeared in his eyes. Sejong, who was looking at that scene, instantly added a word. The people are calling me you guys now, but I look forward to the day when the people and the crown prince will call me Kyung instead of you guys. Can I look forward to it? I will risk my life to meet your expectations. We will never disappoint you. Your Majesty, live forever. 8,000 years old. 8,000 years old. It was the moment when a support group called Religious was created for King Sejong and Hyang. Because there was a precedent, Zhang Cho and Zhang Yinji did not show much resistance to Hyang's words and immediately agreed. When the two people agreed, Hyang immediately asked King Sejong for approval. Zhang 5 items? Isn't that too high? In the case of the past Sungkyunkwan students and this year's minors, they are ranked 6th grade. So, that's why I say it. Even those who got the best grades there start at the 6th grade. Isn't the 5th grade too much? Because I am capable enough. In response to Hyang's words, King Sejong resolutely expressed his refusal. If those skills are just educational grades, I cannot accept it. If you want to give that rank, come with the results to prove it. The limit to what I can grant right now is Zhang 6. Hello, Abima. When Hyang tried to refute something, Sejong raised his hand to stop Hyang from speaking. Crown, I know that you are smart and capable of getting things done, and I know very well that you value personal punishment. However, the most basic thing in all of this is fairness and fairness. This person named Lee Sun-ji may be as talented as you said. No, it must be talent. However, if you were given the 5th rank right away as you requested, will those working in other departments accept it? They will think that it is not because they recognize Sueonji Lee's talent, but because she entered your research institute. So, I have no choice but to give it the 6th rank. You know what I mean, right? King nodded at Sejong's words. Yes, Abima. I will follow Abimama's will. Thanks. In this way, Sueonji Lee began as the 6th rank Zhang. Oh my gosh, it works. I'm dying. I'm dying. This is hell. While working at the research institute, those who passed the exam with Sueonji Lee began to cry. The industry academia classes that I started as soon as I entered the university were difficult, but the practical work was even more difficult. When the new researchers complained, the senior researchers who saw them said something. It's hard? Can't you do it? Then, tell the crown prince and move on. We only need to bring in those who passed the exam with you and want to come here. Rather than forcing people to work and get upset, we just have to add a little more trouble to what we already have. The new researchers immediately became agitated by the words of the senior researcher. Work in the lab was hell, but the outside was also hell. Escaping from this hell was a matter of resigning and moving out, but due to the newly changed system, if you quit, you would simply become a citizen. Even if I tried to overcome the past again, I would have to start over from the beginning in the same hell. When new researchers became discouraged, senior researchers gently offered carrots. Don't just think that it's hard, but find reward in your work. If you do it right, not only will the crown prince give you a lot of rewards, but the Lord will reward you a lot. And it's fun to do this too. The senior researchers at the institute had reached the point of enjoying pain in just 1 year. No, I became a fanatic by traveling around the country and conducting various experiments at Area 51. While other new recruits were going through difficult times, Sueonji Lee actually enjoyed every day. Thanks to the outstanding talent shown in industrial academic education, Sueonji Lee was able to be put into practical work in less than 4 months. However, since he was so talented, it was natural that there would be people who were jealous of him. Lee Soon-ji was the youngest among those who came in with him. Additionally, he received the highest rank. In the end, they soon started calling Lee Soon-ji of Byeoljong. Look, you're a star. Where are you going, Byeoljong Nari? Every time someone called her as a special kind, Sueonji Lee responded with a smile. Haha, why are you doing that? However, as soon as it was determined that those who were jealous had gone too far, Sueonji Lee immediately began to accept it. Among the new arrivals, he received the highest rank Zhuoring, and received the title of chief researcher, another talent that only his family knew about. Vitriolic language was the weapon. Suanji Li's job was to inspect the researchers' assignments. Here are the results. Please review. After receiving the results, Suanji Li started to calculate while making a snoring sound. Let's see. This calculation is wrong. Yes? Where? This part here. You couldn't believe something so easy was wrong. Did you even think about whether you were adjusting from a regular jabang while calculating? Kyung. From then on, Li Sunji's harsh words began pouring out to researchers. Kihi. I can't believe I got something so easy wrong. I guess I'll have to take industry academia classes again. Oh my. Isn't this the most basic addition? I made a mistake with addition. If you have trouble doing mental calculations, write a formula. A formula? You can barely use this to write a formula? Is there any paper left? Is this wrong? Just count your fingers and toes to calculate. What should I do if I make mistakes in the most basic one-digit addition and subtraction? Is it something you hang on your neck because you feel empty without it? Or is it something you hang on your neck to make you think? Do you think your skull is 3 times thicker than others? Otherwise, even if you had a brain the same size as others, you could solve it. But it's impossible to get something this easy wrong. It's a problem you can't get wrong unless you have a much smaller brain than others. Are you using your energy well at night? If you work like this, you are unlikely to get promoted. So shouldn't you at least use your energy at night to avoid being humble? Qua. Oh, that one. The researchers who had been robbed by Li Sunji had to vent their anger while looking at the moon as soon as they left the palace gate. Li Sunji's notoriety also reached the ears of superiors such as Zhang Enji and Zhang Chou. This guy seems to be making things work really hard. Zhang Enji responded immediately to Zhang Chou's words. That's right. However, it is also true that the results come out better as a result. Sometimes a person needs to be a bit harsh to deal with subordinates, so let's leave it at that for now. Zhang Chou and Zhang Enji nodded to Li Chion's suggestion while listening to the story. Of course. In fact, the 3 people all had similar thoughts, although they didn't say it out loud. It may be rude, but this left and right might get along well with the Lord Chief Minister or the Crown Prince. Neither of you have good personalities. The truth is, the 3 of them also hadn't heard from their subordinates that they had good personalities. Rather, it was a situation where everyone was talking behind their backs as they saw Li Sunji being trusted by Zhang Enji and Zhang Chou. They said they were playing together. Do you have to have a dirty temper to receive a good grade? New researchers, including Suanji Li, and existing researchers were doing their best to wrestle with numbers to solve the tasks given by the Cent. There were some tasks that were easily solved as the number of people increased, but there were also many that were not. Among the remaining difficult issues, the most representative one was the correction of the calendar. Late at night. I do not understand. Suanji Li twisted her head as she opened a book full of formulas. What he was worried about now was that too many variables were included in the formula for correcting the calendar. In a leap year, leap months, leap days, and seasons. You could just add leap months according to the existing custom and add or subtract the seasons to the calendar brought from China, but then there was no point in revising the current calendar. No. If you adjust the formula based on the data you have researched now, the accuracy will increase further. But, Suanji Li stretched with a bizarre groan and continued talking to herself. You have to calibrate it every year, and you have to calibrate it again every 2 or 3 years. This doesn't make sense. The teachings of the sage, as well as the teachings of the Buddha, were truly simple. In Suanji Li's opinion, the teachings of the sage and Buddha were truly concise. As a result, Suanji Li had the following values. The truth must be simple and concise. According to those values, the formula we are currently creating was truly a mess. It has to be corrected every year, and every 2 or 3 years, an extra month is added, and the 2nd and 3rd years were also variables. In other words, a ridiculous situation of repeating corrections for the sake of correction occurred. Because of this unresolved problem, Suanji Li postponed her resignation and continued to worry about it. Suanji Li moved the teacups next to her and muttered, "This is the land. The sun, moon, and stars revolve around this earth, creating day and night." Suanji Li, who placed the kettle in the center and was spinning the teacup around it, suddenly stopped spinning the teacup. For a moment, what if the center of this rotation is not the land we live in? Suanji Li raised her finger, drew an imaginary trajectory, and started calculating. Li Sunji, who was waving her hands and muttering like a crazy person, came to a conclusion. When the center of rotation is the sun, an eclipse is established. Just place the sun in the center. Suunji Lee took the blank papers piled to one side and quickly started writing down the formula. Lee Soon-ji, who was frantically writing down formulas as if possessed by a god, at some point put down her pen and clenched her fists. Also, there are no more variables for variables. Haha. Wow. Suunji Lee burst into laughter and screamed as if she had lost her mind. A feeling of greater pleasure than the first time he experienced it was hitting his entire body. Suunji Lee stood up, opened the window, and shouted, "The center of the world is not this earth. This land is also just a dependent variable." Lee Soon-ji, who found the solution through a sudden enlightenment last night, devoted herself to organizing the formulas she had found. It was basic that he gave up on leaving the house, and he even skipped meals every now and then, and rumors began to circulate among researchers. Someone has lost his mind. Jong Cho and Jong In-ji, who heard the rumor and visited Lee Soon-ji to check on the situation, gaped when they saw the pile of papers next to Lee Soon-ji. What is this? Jong Cho and Jong In-ji, who were looking at the situation unfolding before their eyes with surprised faces, soon looked at the contents written on the paper. What? Since Jong Cho and Jong In-ji were experts in arithmetic, they soon recognized the value of the formulas written by Lee Sun-ji. Jong Cho looked at Jong In-ji, who had a very nervous expression on his face. "I will report to you right away, so you can keep an eye on that friend from here." "I understand, Captain." After some time, Kiang came running from Area 51 after receiving the urgent report and looked at the papers in question. Kiang's face was seriously crumpled as he examined what was written on the paper. Shit, even I can't handle this level. Although others did not know it, Kiang was someone who chose liberal arts because of math, even in the 21st century. What he was most confident in was the classic method of solving problems by confronting them with his body. Although he did not understand clearly, Kiang understood the general content and gave orders to Jong Cho and Jong In-ji. "Put the doctor on standby immediately." "All right. And, until this task is completed and officially reported to Abima, please keep this matter confidential." "I follow your orders. And, I think I won the argument, right?" "Okay." Jong Cho and Jong In-ji groaned at Kiang's question. As the research institute was created and the calendar was revised, a controversy arose between Kiang, Jong Cho, and Jong In-ji. The topics of debate were the Earth is round, and the Earth revolves around the sun. In order to modify the calendar, astronomical observations were essential, and in the process, a conflict of concepts occurred. The argument that the Earth is round easily led to a victory for the fragrance. This was because of the observation report that the horizon seen from a high mountain facing the sea draws an arc, and the help of Muslims. However, there was quite a long debate about the heliocentric theory, because it was impossible to completely refute it as the entrance exam education was at a superficial level. And, as the debate ended in a draw, the armillary sphere was not placed on the exhibition stand at the institute. Oh, Galileo and Copernicus, the harmful effects of entrance exam education that only knows the parallax. Kiang, who only knew the name but did not know the content and could not win the argument, looked up at the sky and cried out about the harmful effects of college entrance exam education. A month later, Kiang gathered King Sejong and the ministers and held a presentation on calendar correction. The person in charge of the presentation was Suunji Lee. Lee Soon-ji, who even took Chong Simwon to relieve tension, calmly carried out the presentation. That is all. When Lee Sun-ji finished her presentation, King Sejong, who had been listening intently until the end, praised Lee Sun-ji. "Good job. That was a really good theory. Crown Prince, what do you think of Jwarang's theory?" "I compared it with previous almanacs and records of solar and lunar eclipses, and there was no mistake. Then, I guess we can say that we have finally created our own calendar?" In response to Sejong's question, King corrected the word. "It's a correction method. Abima." "Yes, correction method, duh." Sejong, who was nodding his head with a bitter expression, looked back at his ministers. "What do you think?" Huang He answered King Sejong's question as a representative. "I think it would be best to apply the correction to the calendar immediately and use it. However, the problem is when you make it into a book and then use it for educational purposes. The book will definitely be released, but then problems will arise. There are a few sentences that need to be removed." "Leave the sentence?" Huang He answered King Sejong's question. "The part that says the world is spherical, and the part that says the world revolves around the sun. If you do something wrong, the government will take issue with it." That's right. Sejong nodded at Huang He's point. The worldview so far is the world is flat, and the center of the world is Yonghua. However, the theory coming out of the lab now denies this. However, removing the sentence did not suit King Sejong's taste. Of course, it was said that the Ming was a superior country, and that due to the difference in national power, they had to pay attention to the Ming. But they did not like the idea of their pride being hurt. Is there any other way? Huang He answered King Sejong's question again. You just need to emphasize that it is simply a natural law. Is it a simple law of nature? Right. When Sejong nodded, Huang He added, in order to make such a claim, you need solid physical evidence to prove it. Currently, the evidence provided by the Research Institute is insufficient. Right. I command the Crown Prince. Yes, Abama. You know what to do, right? Yes, I will gather more evidence to prove the theory and make the theory stronger. You know very well. Then, what should you do? Lee Jik stepped forward and answered Sejong's question. We need to make them understand that this is just a simple law of nature and does not deviate from the four virtues. I know very well. Your responsibility is very heavy. Judge Zhou bowed his head and responded to King Sejong's words. I honor your command with all my heart. Well then, let's leave it here. When King Sejong declared the end of the presentation, the ministers left and came outside. Hada. Yepan, thank you for your hard work. Yepan, you too must have had a hard time. As the other ministers who came along said something one by one, Yifan screamed. Wow, why is the Crown Prince so useless? Yes, son. Yifan, who was about to say something about the Crown Prince and the Research Institute, immediately shut his mouth at Huang He's words. Useless? Do you really think that? Well, even now, in moderation. What a frustrating person. Have you forgotten that because of the appropriateness, you couldn't match the season and saw a lot of blood? And yet you are still a substitute. I apologize. In response to Huang He's criticism, Yezhou Pancio had to bow his head. In Joseon, where farming was everything in the economy, keeping the seasons in sync was very important. If this feast was not properly celebrated, all the criticism of the people would be directed at the king, and the king would have to respond by reprimanding those involved. I know the burden is increasing on you and Yezhou. However, it is Yezhou's duty to resolve it. How can they find only what is comfortable for them? If you want to live that comfortably, hand in your resignation letter and get out. I'm sick of being scolded instead. I'm sick of it. It was Huang He who showed her sincerity in the last sentence. In order to avoid conflict with the Ming dynasty, problematic sentences were removed from the books distributed to Sungwon, and the original was treated as top secret and stored in a safe. Since the governor's declaration, the ministers have changed a lot. No, it had to change. I had no choice but to change due to Sejong's grudges that came out whenever I didn't like the way things were done at all. At the forefront of these changing ministers were government officials. This was because when the work carried out by the ministers of the six dynasties or under them was not progressing, the first to receive criticism were the ministers. Thanks to this, the personalities of the monks also became much harsher. Not only Li Jik and Huang He, but even Meng Sason, who was known to be a good person, had become the default for throwing harsh words when things were not done well. After becoming Zhang Sum, I changed as a person. You've become a very nasty person. It was a common assessment when looking at the three people who had become irritable. However, the monks also had something to say. Then you did a good job. Why do I have to be criticized by the chief executive? Am I a mischief? If you don't want to be criticized, don't do something that will cause you to be criticized. If you feel unfair, file an appeal or submit your resignation. Submit your resignation. Thanks to being forced to change like that, the officials got their work done faster. A representative example was when I returned from the audit of Area 51. Huang He, who sensed that King Sejong wanted mass production, told Hopan in advance and was able to prepare a record of iron production and present it to King Sejong. In return for such changes, there were fewer instances where monks had to hear things they most disliked. Compared to what I heard, these were the words. Huang He and the monks were worried about one problem these days. The problem they were concerned about was supply and demand of iron. As the mass production of Gapsik Jangchangtong and Bijiob Jinshinro was decided, the government needed a large amount of iron, especially mild steel. Until the Goryeo dynasty and the early Joseon dynasty, there was a salt iron system in which iron was received directly from the people, but the castration system had to be changed due to opposition from farmers. The method chosen to replace the salt iron system was the iron yard system. which involved building iron cages near iron mines and mobilizing farmers to produce iron during the off-season. However, this system also had many problems, and because it involved forced mobilization of farmers, resistance and decreased morale from farmers were a problem. In the end, the answer that Sejong gave was simple. We purchase items that meet established standards and quality. However, the ministers in charge of practical work were in trouble. There is no budget. In the end, the monks, who could not find a good answer even after putting their heads together and thinking together, let King Sejong know that there was a problem. Your Majesty, we are trying to implement the policy you have given, but there is a problem. Problem? Is the budget a problem? That's right. King Sejong clicked his tongue for the first time in a long time at the answers of the officials. Tisk. However, this time the monks also had something to say. Your Majesty, in order to solve the budget problem, we are diverting the amount coming from the city iron system, but there are some parts that must be used, so if we exclude that amount, we will not have much room. Your Majesty, the problem with purchasing the parts that are not enough even after being diverted like that is the budget. Your Highness, in order to solve this budget problem, we must solve the tax collection problem, but we are not yet ready. Taxes are not the only problem. When you purchase iron, you have to pay for it, and there is a limit to the amount of grain and cotton grapes that can be used as payment. To solve this problem, currency management is essential, but we are not yet ready. Well, King Sejong was also frustrated by the answers of the officials. I wanted to work enthusiastically, but Joseon's insufficient capabilities were holding me back. Let's think about it a little more. Yes, Your Highness. King Sejong, who sent away his ministers, sighed. Whoa, what kind of country is this? It's not even a bright apricot. King heard the rumor and clicked his tongue. SK. It's so hard to build up. King found a blank piece of paper and started writing. The best thing would be a state-owned enterprise, right? Pocheol. How good is it? King Sejong, who accepted the appeal saying, let's create a state-run company and take charge of the supply and demand of iron, immediately bowed down. Is that right? However, the ministers who read Hyang's appeal shook their heads. How can we conduct commerce in this country? Even if it is a state-owned enterprise, it pursues profit. So how can the government pursue profit? Tisk. King Sejong clicked his tongue at the reactions of the ministers. As soon as King Sejong clicked his tongue, the ministers became tense and reflected on their remarks. How can you be so short-thinking? If the government makes iron, will only the government benefit? Isn't iron produced all over the 8 islands of Joseon? In areas where iron is produced, the price is cheap, and in areas where iron is not produced, the price is high and the people are having a hard time. Don't you think that the government could solve this problem if it made the iron itself? Why don't you know that the antioxidant problem can also be solved? Let's think about it a little bit. There were ministers who had become victims of King Sejong's actions. As the craftsmanship progressed, Joseon's artisan society, especially the craftsmen, suffered greatly. The reason I suffered from physical aches was because of a chain reaction that started from a feeling of exhaustion. As many of the craftsmen who belonged to the military flag inspector moved to the Research Institute in Area 51, the military flag inspector needed craftsmen. Select skilled craftsmen from the Yuksa-gun, Jiseon-gun, and Yongjin-gun throughout Joseon and elevate them to Hanseong. Let's look at the skills of the craftsmen who have risen through the ranks and fill in the gaps in military discipline. I follow your orders. Following King Sejong's command, an uproar broke out in military camps across the country. Among the craftsmen who made weapons such as swords and bows in the military camp, those who were reputed to have good skills came to Hanseong. King Sejong also attended the screening of craftsmen who would work at the military headquarters. King Sejong's greed for talented people shone through even here, as he selected about 30% more people than the military captain's quota. Those who have met the military captain's quota, send those remaining to Area 51. I follow your orders. Kang was excited about the unexpected gift and bowed deeply to King Sejong. I'm devastated, Abama. It was natural for a chain reaction to occur in this situation. What will we do if the craftsmen who make swords are taken away? It's reprehensible to just pick and eat meat from a banquet table. But if you take someone with you like this, in a county that was suddenly deprived of good craftsmen, it was necessary to search for craftsmen who were well known in the civilian world and bring them into the county. If there was one good thing that came out of all that commotion, the perception of artisans had changed somewhat positively. Both the government and the people began to value craftsmen with good skills, and their treatment also improved. It was a butterfly effect created by Sejong and Hyang, who were greedy for people. As soon as the decision was made to create a state-owned enterprise dedicated to the production of iron, the township and ministers exchanged opinions on the preparation process for this. To be precise, the scent was forced into the meeting where the ministers were exchanging opinions. You do a lot of work even if you don't, but even if you don't get involved in this. Considering the amount of supplies that will be consumed in the lab in Area 51, this is absolutely necessary. Wanting to avoid a situation where her sister-in-law, who was even more obnoxious than her mother-in-law, got involved, Plong he tried to stop her, but Hyang steadfastly took her place. If it's already done at Area 51, I'll be in charge of the review. You don't have to go that far. It is the great cause of the nation. As the crown prince, I must step forward. Please do so. Hyang, who said he would be in charge of judging, persuaded King Sejong and received permission. Are you going to be okay? Huang he answered the worried questions of the ministers with an expression that said it was no big deal. Isn't this good for us? There is already a lot of work to be done. The primary selection criterion for craftsmen related to steelmaking was suggested by fragrance, a region with a high proportion of pure iron in the overall amount of donations. When we set the standard as a place that produced a relatively large amount of suwuso, rather than a place with a large amount of cast iron or suwuso, quite a lot of areas fell out. Through the first screening, one place was selected in Chungcheong-do, and Gyeongju and Hapcheon were selected in Gyeongsang-do. Although there were iron yards with high production in other places, this was because the production ratio of raw iron in these three places was higher than that of other places. As soon as the first candidate was decided, the cavalrymen, holding in their arms a seal containing the name of the deceased, rode away. What a shame! At the call that a royal decree had come from Hanseong, the local officials neatly arranged their robes, bowed deeply towards Hanseong, and politely received the seal. After breaking the seal and checking the contents of the seal, the local officials sighed. It's work again. According to the command, people selected from 3 iron camps came to Hanseong. We need a place to compete against them. Hearing Huang He's words, King Sejong looked back. The scent immediately responded to the unspoken command. We will make room for you in Area 51. Sure. In this way, a place to compete for skills was decided, but a problem arose among the craftsmen. Artisans are refusing to smelt in the same place. After receiving the report from the late head, Kang frowned and asked the reason. What's the reason? It is said that extracting iron is a secret of secret techniques and cannot be shown to competitors. Faced with an awkward situation, Kang looked back at the ministers. Among the ministers who had similar expressions, Huang He opened her mouth. Can't we just force it? At Huang He's suggestion, Go Yejong shook his head. Then they will just leave. Even though it is the government's business? Thanks to hard work, they all have tough personalities and a lot of pride. These are people who would never force someone to do anything, even if they would rather have their head cut off. Well, tisk. In response to the late leader's answer, Gang looked at the map of Area 51. How much space does it take to make a Suidupuri kill? I think it would be possible if we make space here, here, and here, so they won't overlap. Please wait a moment. After hearing Hyang's words, Go Yejong, who was looking at the map, immediately went outside and started taking measurements. After wandering around the vacant lot and measuring the location, the late manager returned and reported to the township. I think it's possible. Then talked to the bonesmiths, heads of the blacksmiths. The goalkeepers immediately accepted Hyang's proposal. The Galpiancio, who decided on a location by drawing lots, led the people they'd brought with them and settled in that location. Hyang, who was watching the bone craftsman and his subordinates moving around in one corner of the laboratory, looked back at Go Yejong. There are quite a few people with you, right? It's quite a lot if you do the work of Galpiansu, Pyonpiansu, dam repair and backed by Alpiansu, firebenders, and charcoal smiths. Is it? Listening to Go Yejong's answer, Kang rubbed his hands excitedly. It will be fun when the competition begins in earnest. Will you continue to watch? When will we see something like this again? Yes, that is true. The scent was exciting. When I was taught by a traditional swordsmith in the 21st century, I saw small kills making small iron, but I had never seen the full-scale process of making iron like this. Once the location was selected, the villagers gathered together. The place has been prepared, and the materials you said you need have also been prepared. Let's check to see if anything is missing. Yes, sir. At the command of the head, the bone craftsman headed to the place where the ingredients prepared in advance were located. The first thing the bone craftsman checked were the most important materials, iron ore, and charcoal to be used as firewood. and it was the first test process prepared by Hyang. All of the bone craftsmen who went to the place where the raw material, iron ore, was piled up looked at the incense with embarrassed expressions. Sir, is it stone iron that needs to be removed from the iron? Hyang nodded to the question asked in his unique dialect. Most of them are made of stone. I found some good iron ore not long ago. Why can't I? It's a little inconvenient, but there's nothing you can't do. It's right. Well, there's nothing you can't do. In response to the skeleton guard's answers, Hyang muttered softly to the eunuch standing behind her. Everyone gets 1 extra point. Yes, sir. Hyang's eyes, which were evaluating the bone craftsman, soon opened round. This was because the bone hunters were showing unexpected behavior. The smiths picked iron ore at random from various piles of iron ore, took out hammers from the baskets they were wearing, and smashed the iron ore. Once there was an appropriate amount of iron or powder, the smiths took out iron needles and lamps from the basket. The bone smiths sucked the iron needle once, moistened it with saliva, and then coated the metal needle with iron powder. The craftsman who put an appropriate amount of iron powder on an iron needle lit the lamp and pushed the iron needle into the flame. As the iron needle went in and the color of the flame changed, all the bone craftsmen muttered, "This has a lot of sulfur? This is where the scent was most effective." I knew about the flame reaction. After confirming the condition of iron, the most important raw material, the bone cutters moved to the red clay piled on one side. Regardless of who they were, the bone craftsmen picked up the red clay with their fingers, tasted it, and shook their heads slightly. What's the problem? There is a lot of sulfur mixed in stone iron. To make good iron, you have to remove the sulfur energy, but it's a bit difficult with the energy this soil has. That's right. The soil is a little soggy. In response to the goalkeeper's answers, Hyang immediately organized the situation. Then, you guys find suitable soil. That's right, I don't see any limestone. I'll save you. In the selection process that followed, the goalkeepers found themselves in an awkward situation. What is this stone? It's called coal. I'll use it instead of charcoal. Go Yajong. Yes, sir. At the command of the township, the Go Yajong came forward and explained coal to the smiths. After prospectors discovered coal, the first people to use it were the artisans working in Area 51. Therefore, Go Yajong, who had the most experience with coal, stepped forward. As if the explanation from a person in the same industry had worked, the knitters immediately nodded. It's coal. Does it look fun? Did you say it has better firepower than charcoal? How should I get the ratio right? They say it's also mixed with sulfur. A little more red clay and lime. Can't you? In response to Hyang's question, all of the bone hunters shook their heads. Then, as soon as I prepare the materials, I will build the kiln. Since the Gyeongju Palanquin takes the most time, we will begin the competition as soon as the Gyeongju Palanquin is completed. Yes, sir. That day, after returning to the East Palace, Hyang scratched his head and muttered nervously. You even knew about the flame reaction. What the hell? How much has this damn Joseon forgotten about what it had? As the bone knitters obtained the necessary materials and began building the kiln, the county conducted an evaluation, carefully recording the process. The kiln is square? If you make it this way, it will be easier to stack iron ore and charcoal. Isn't this palanquin a bit tall? The higher the height, the better the metal. Is it? While Hyang was talking with the bone players, the eunuch standing behind recorded the conversation and added or subtracted points by checking Hyang's hand signals. In the process of making the kiln, it was Gyeongju that caught Hyang's attention. While other places mainly made earthen kilns using clay, Gyeongju made kilns mainly using stones. Is there any good in making it out of stone? Do you think it can withstand the heat well? Stones alone cannot withstand the heat. You have to apply dirt. But, if you keep talking like this, there's no need to smoke every time, right? Is it? After hearing the answer, Kang made a small gesture. At Hyang's hand signal, the inner officer recorded the score on the table. 2 extra points for racing. Once the kiln was built, the bone smiths began the process of extracting iron. There was trial and error when using coal instead of charcoal, but the scent was not an issue. This is a process you have to go through, so I won't make an issue of it. After experiencing such a short period of trial and error, the bone smiths began to spin iron in earnest. The competition had begun. In a competition that lasted for 15 days, excluding the time spent on making the kiln, the winner was Gyeongju's goalkeeper. Kang explained to King Sejong why Gyeongju won. The first reason is that Gyeongju used stones to build stone kilns. It's not that other craftsmen don't use stones, but while clay was the main material in Gyeongju, stone was the main material and clay was the secondary material. Because of this, I guess we can continue to use the kiln? That's right. Next comes the manpower that goes into the process of producing polished iron. In other kilns, the raw iron that comes out of the kiln is heated again in the kiln, and then workers pound it with hammers to make it into pure iron. It's going to take a lot of manpower. That's right. Then what about racing? Did you use another method? Gyeongju mixes the raw iron produced in this way with selected miscellaneous iron and melts it again. Melt it again? Doesn't that seem like a waste of time? It wasn't in vain. When the molten iron that was melted again was cooled, most of it was pure iron, and a significant amount of steel was also produced. Huh. It's amazing. Tiang nodded at Sejong's evaluation. I didn't know the scent, but the double melting process used by Gyeongju was a denaturation process similar to the Bessemer converter. It was a method that dramatically reduced the amount of carbon mixed in iron during the two melting processes, and was similar to the steelmaking method of the 20th century, if simply compared. Note 1. Galpyeonsu of Gyeongju, the final winner through competition, was called the place where both King Sejong and the ministers were located. Galpyeonsu, who had been summoned to the gathering of not only the heavenly Sangamama but also all the prominent ministers known throughout the world, was trembling and lying flat on his back, just breathing. Take it easy on your bones. Galpyeonsu answered King Sejong's command in a loud voice. The castle is ruined, ruined. Like that, Gwaine has something to ask you. This time, we are opening the largest iron cage in the country. Are you willing to take on the task? Poetry, poetry, poetry. If you tell me to do it, I will risk my life to do it. Sejong smiled at Galpyeonsu's question. There is no need to risk your life. The place where a large iron ore was discovered is Pyongan Island. Coal was also found in Pyongan Island, but there is some distance between the two places. Where do you think would be a good place to build an iron cage? When the problem that was his area of expertise came up, Galpyeonsu suddenly relaxed. In response to Sejong's question, Galpyeonsu asked a question. Because they are from the countryside and only know Gyeongju, they don't know much about geography. How far is the distance between the two places? It's 100 miles. Fortunately, there is a river so we can use water transportation. After gathering his thoughts for a moment in response to Sejong's answer, Galpyeonsu answered. When building a cage, stone or charcoal are important, but the most important thing is clay. If the soil is good, the iron will come out good. This time, I saw that both stone and iron and coal were mixed with a lot of sulfur. To catch this sulfur, you need good soil and a lot of lime. Then, I need to go and see it with my own eyes to know. Even if you have to transport stone, iron, and coal, you have to go to a place with good soil. The most important thing is the soil. Is that so? That's right. King Sejong was lost and thought at Galpyeonsu's firm answer. Sejong thought in silence for a while, and came to a conclusion. Good night. I give you the rank of Taoist. You go and examine the situation, find the best place and build a cage. I obey your command. What was your name? I don't have a last name. I just call him Deoksu. I give you the surname Kim. As my family name is Iron and Gold, I hope that your descendants will also inherit your legacy. I am devastated. Galpyeonsu, who was suddenly given the castle, went out crying profusely. As Galpyeonsu went out, Long Hui and the ministers all looked at King Sejong. Why? Are you dissatisfied with giving the rank of 5th grade servant to a simple iron master? It's not that I don't know your majesty's true intentions, but I'm afraid your rank is too high. Is there anyone among you who knows how to make iron? Doesn't exist. But are you looking at me with contempt because I'm just a swindler? I come to you, Huonggong. I keep saying this, but don't do anything that would be embarrassing. Here comes the emperor. Tisk. If it were like Jang Yongsil's time, there would have been a lot of excitement over giving a government post to someone with a low level of vocation, but now that has become less common, because once is difficult, twice is not. And with the newly discovered personality of Sejong, it was certain that words like this would come out. Then, would you like to make a sutra? 10 days after Deoksu was bestowed the castle in Pyongyang, people dressed in official uniforms and military uniforms flocked to Deoksu's house in Gyeongju. What a shame. Huh? What does this mean? Deoksu's family members who were working at the house and at the blacksmith shop next to it were confused. Galpyeonsu Kim Deoksu's associates, come out and receive orders. Kim Deoksu? It is true that your father's name is Deoksu, but is he Mr. Kim? Is that the problem? They say it's a mystery now. Deoksu's family rushed out and knelt in the yard. The official standing in front of Deoksu's family unwrapped the scroll and read it aloud. I give Deoksu, the master of iron bars in Gyeongju, the title of 5th-ranked Taoist master. Also, I give Deoksu the last name Kim. After reading for a while, the official wrapped the scroll around it and asked the question, who is Master Kim's eldest son? At his question, a large young man from the blacksmith stood up. It's my name. Congratulations. With congratulatory words, the official handed the young man a scroll with his name on it, documents recording various concubines, and a reward. Where is your father? Master Kim left for Wanghedu immediately after receiving the royal decree. That day, Deoksu's family threw all their belongings and had a feast. And the story of the Deoksu family's miraculous rise to status has become a local legend. I wish I had just 2 bodies, no less, no more. As the year passed, King began to complain like this often. It was because, even though I could smell it, I had a lot of work to do. And the reason why things became so busy was King Sejong. To be precise, Sejong's purchasing agency was the problem. They say the Jin dynasty created its own writing system. I heard Mongolia also had its own writing system, right? Now that you have already obtained it, please try to obtain some Cheoncha characters as well. I think we need some records about the temple. I need to know where the rule of using your biceps started. Yes, Abima. Every time Sejong made a purchase request, the scent had to be twisted in one way or another to get the book. I think I can understand the behavior of the Jurchen people by knowing the military system of the Jin dynasty established by the Jurchen people, so please get me some related books. If possible, please first obtain something written in Jin dynasty characters. I would like to know about Northern Yuan, so please obtain records about its predecessor, Yuan. The writings written by Minghua may be biased, so if possible, please first obtain one written in Mongolian and then obtain the commentary as well. Cheonchuk said that mathematics has advanced considerably. Could you please get me some related books? We need to look at books related to industry and academia written by our ancestors. Please get me some. This is the book you brought me last time. The biceps were used a lot. Is it possible for me to obtain records about the temple? Once I found the book by twisting around like this, that wasn't the end. The actual destination was Sejong, but the apparent recipient was Hyang. Therefore, Hyang had to understand the contents of the book with the feeling of crying and eating mustard, because it was a question that ministers like old gingers sometimes asked. Sir, I heard you found an unusual book last time. Shin, I am also interested in books from foreign countries. Can you tell me what they are about? Oh, I'm still organizing it. There are a lot of books that came with it. Is that so? I heard those books are worth a lot of money. The county, which seemed to be trying to pressure the government with a source of funds, responded immediately. Haha, so my pockets are always empty. Unlike some people, I have no connection with gifts. Is that so? Calm. A risk. For that reason, Kiang had to additionally learn foreign languages as well as phonology, even though he didn't want to. Kiang's hardships did not end here. The study room, which had been created for the purpose of source cleaning and reference, had no choice but to be opened. Are there a lot of empty books? His Majesty the Lord took it. Is it? While listening to the eunuch's answer, Kiang looked at the empty space in the study. All you have to do is take the phonology books. But why are the math books? Are you also laundering the sources? The study in the East Palace is full of fascinating books. Joseon also borrows a few books. The people who were excited by these rumors were the officials of the Research Institute. I'd like to see a slightly higher-level industry academia book. I'd like to see students' applications for city development, which is their current assignment. The officials, unable to overcome their desires, wrote a joint appeal and submitted it to the local government. Use it. I can't help it. It's a hassle to write them all down separately and hand them out. With the amount we have secured so far, there is a certain amount of source laundering. After making the decision, Kang immediately requested that a separate building be built in the East Palace. Wouldn't it be okay to just remodel the rooms in the East Palace and use them like we do now? I also need space for my personal life. It's really easy to get there now. Abima, if you want to hide a tree, you have to hide it in the forest. At Hyang's last words, King Sejong accepted the request. Thanks to recruiting a large number of skilled craftsmen, another outbuilding was completed quickly. When the building was completed, Kang moved most of the books he had, except for a few that he absolutely had to keep there. Well, we moved everything, but if there's a fire, it'll be over? The village, worried about the fire, immediately took action. Buckets full of sand were placed in certain spaces, and a small pond was dug outside the outbuilding. After all preparations were completed, Kang made a request to King Sejong. Please name it. It's a name, King Sejong, who was worried. picked up a brush instead of a gold pen and wrote his name on a piece of paper. Home support, books contain knowledge. Your study contains books not only from our Joseon dynasty, but also from the distant West. Isn't it a place where all the world's knowledge is gathered? The name Zip Support would be most appropriate. I am devastated. With the hanging of the plaque engraved with King Sejong's handwriting, Zipjuan began its activities in earnest. The main task of house support was the management and receipt of books. There was a difference in the lending of books. For Hyang and King Sejong, the owners of the books, for an indefinite period of time. For the royal family, for a maximum of 10 days. For officials belonging to the Research Institute, for 5 days. And for officials of other departments, for 3 days. In addition, reborrowing a book immediately after returning it was prohibited, preventing one person from monopolizing the book. What Hyang was concerned about when creating rules for lending was about royalty. Would there be any royal family who would come here and borrow books? However, since we don't know what will happen in the distant future, it wouldn't be a bad idea to prepare in advance. As Zipjuan began its activities in earnest, the place it visited most was Sejong. These are the books that the Crown Prince referenced, so I wonder if Gwaine might also reference them. Meanwhile, among the books that were being pulled out 5 or 6 at a time, there were books related to language. All the books are in the original language, so there is a need to translate them. King Sejong made this excuse every time his ministers saw him and naturally borrowed linguistics books. As not only housing support but also research institutes were built around the East Palace, people were always busy coming and going around the East Palace. This busy scene caught Yu's attention. Why are there so many people in the East Palace? Yu, who had just turned 8, was trying to be more dignified little by little. Master Wang gave a simple answer to Yu's question. It's because His Majesty the Crown Prince has a lot of work to do. Brother? Yu, who was tilting his head, asked Master Wang a question. Can I take a look? At Yu's request, the prince's office looked into possibilities. He is a prince with a very lively personality, but I heard there are a lot of things in the research lab that could cause serious trouble if you mess with him. But wouldn't it be possible to get some stimulation there and become interested in learning? In the current situation, we need to make people interested in learning, even if it's just miscellany, not Confucian learning. After making his decision, Master Wang answered Yu. I will make a request to His Majesty the Lord. After hearing the prince's request, King Sejong asked the prince. Many of the objects in the laboratory are so precise that they cannot be handled carelessly. Won't Will touch it? This was a question that King Sejong asked because he knew full well that Yu was an idiot. Master Prince Wang answered King Sejong's question in a firm voice. God himself will stand next to you and help you. King Sejong stroked his beard and was deep in thought as he listened to the prince's words. After mulling over things for a while, King Sejong came to a conclusion. Good night. Tell the Crown Prince and set a date. I am devastated. When contacted by Master Wang, who was in charge of Yu's discipline, Hyang set a date and responded. I am devastated, Crown Prince. Even to the point of ruin. Thank you for paying attention to Yu's discipline. Under Hyang's reign, Master Wang shed tears as he remembered the hardships he had endured. I am devastated, my dear. Kihi. A grown man is so full of tears. Pop. A strange situation was created where a pale-faced child comforted a middle-aged man with a white beard. When the appointed date arrived, I visited the Confucian Research Institute with Prince Wang. Hello, how are you? Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen you too. I'm sorry that I don't see you often because I'm busy even though we live in the same palace. No, sir. Hearing Hyang's words, Yu quickly shook his head. From Yu's perspective, Princess Jiangai and Hyang were the same. People who make you feel mentally and physically tired if you see them often. This was Yu's feelings as he looked at Princess Jiangai and Hyang. Nevertheless, Yu couldn't help but be interested in the items in the secret area. As Yu entered the lab, his jaw dropped and his mouth fell open when he saw the displays stand in the hallway. Wowada. Looking at all the amazing objects, Yu repeatedly said, wow. In particular, at a place where models of sailing ships and warships were exhibited. I stopped like a Jangsung and did not know how to take a step. A kid is a kid. When Hyang saw Yu watching frantically, he said something, and everyone around him looked at Hyang with an expression of bewilderment. What are you? This was the common thought of everyone around us. Yu, who forced himself to walk without falling, arrived in a room that surprised even Sejong. Sir, what is this room? This is a room with a geographical model and a train model of Joseon. Geographic model? Model train? Master, what is that? Master Wang also answered Yu's question with a perplexed expression. Sindo, it is well. It's a secret place. So many people don't know about it. Especially you, since you came. I'm showing it to you. Open the door. Yes, sir. At Hyang's command, the eunuch opened the door to the room. When the sliding door opened and you entered, the first thing that caught his eye was the huge statue occupying the center of the room. Because he was still a child, you couldn't see what was on the table. Please bring the stand. Yes, sir. Wow. You climbed onto the pedestal brought by the eunuchs and shouted at the geographical model created on the table. It was an amazing sight that I had never seen before. Is this Joseon? It is a similar imitation of the land and rivers of Joseon. It's not accurate. Wow. Kang secretly smiled at the sight of you, just saying wow over and over again. Children who go to amusement parks do that. Kiang, who was smiling slightly as he watched you let out the exclamation wow with his mouth wide open, saw the prince standing next to you and clenched his fist holding his back. Like you, it was to suppress the laughter that was about to burst out at the sight of Master Wang watching with his mouth wide open. Sir, what is this road here? Kiang immediately answered Yu's question, while pointing to the railroad tracks. This is the road the train runs on. It's called a railroad. Railway? Shell. Yes, sir. At the direction of the township, the officials brought the model locomotive and carriage that were on display on one side and placed them on the railroad tracks. The trainees who connected the locomotive, passenger cars, and freight cars pushed stirrups filled with alcohol into the locomotive and set it on fire. Just wait a little bit. Yes, sir. You, who had been showing signs of impatience while waiting for the water to boil, calmed down after a word from Hyang. Bleep. When a signal was heard that sufficient pressure had been created, the set released the lever and set the locomotive in motion. Ah! When you saw the locomotive moving, he couldn't even utter an exclamation and just became dumbfounded. As you looked at the model locomotive running on the railroad tracks with his mouth open, his breathing began to become increasingly difficult. Yuya. Kiang, who noticed Yu's abnormal symptoms, called you, but you just stared at the movement of the train, breathing heavily. Seeing you like that, I suddenly felt a scent. No way. Deoktong. The model locomotive, which was pulling model carriages and freight cars while emitting steam, circled the large geographical model twice and then stopped due to water running out. When the locomotive stopped, officers removed the model locomotive and trains from the tracks. You, who was watching the model locomotive, with its lamps safely removed, being put back on the display stand, quickly looked back. Tongue bro. No. Degraded. Degraded. Is that thing actually moving? Just by looking at the name, you could tell that his eyes were now turned. That's an object made to prove a theory, so it looks different in reality. At Hyang's gesture, the eunuchs brought model locomotives on display to one side. For models of locomotives, ranging from ones that looked similar to Stephenson's locomotion to steam locomotives familiar to us through movies and dramas, were created at the direction of Hyang after King Sejong visited. However, unlike what Sejong and you saw, these models were literal models that did not move. The scents were explained by pointing to them in order, starting from locomotion. As industry, academia, and technology develop, progress will continue from this side to this side. Wauda. If the locomotive and train are completed and the railroad is laid, these 8 islands of Joseon will become a one-day journey. Wow. Yu's mouth grew wider as he heard the explanation of the scent. Yu, who was looking at the model locomotive while listening to the explanation, spoke to Hyang. Lowering. Building this locomotive. I want to do a grain offering, but Hyang immediately shook his head. You can't. Why? You're not studying, are you? Yu's face became tearful at Hyang's assertion. Looking at Yu's face, Kang explained in more detail. To build this locomotive, many skilled craftsmen are needed, but many smart industrialists are also needed. Just looking at our research institute, there are quite a few people who pass the major exams in addition to the basic exams. Of course, scriptures and industry and academia may not have much to do with each other. However, will someone who says studying abroad is boring and doesn't do it properly do well in industry academia? Hey! Tears began to well up in Yu's eyes at Hyang's harsh words. You are a prince. If you get involved in this, I'll start with a position that requires some level of responsibility. If not only studying abroad but also industry and academia are amiss, will I be treated properly? Are you going to cry and try to get away with it like you did now? Sigh. Oh no. Confucianism is a study that must be fundamentally learned, and at the same time, it is a study that coordinates relationships between people. If you want to participate in this huge task, study properly first. Whoosh. Hearing Hyang's harsh words, You wiped away his tears with his sleeve and asked, then, if Soj studies hard, can he do this? If you have the skills, Soj, I will definitely please you. Kiang flinched and muttered at the sight of you, shouting with eyes shining with desire. What? What is so scary? After that, Yu's behavior completely changed. Not only did he study Confucianism with a serious attitude, but he also practiced martial arts without fail. And Yu, who had been strengthening his resolve by asking Hyang to spend time in a room with model trains whenever he had time, began to fall into the path of a train fanatic without even realizing it. Ha ha ha. Of course, trains are the best. Of course, sometimes he said things like this and made the internal officers nervous. After the situation changed, the dragon caused a problem this time. When Young was 3 years old, he was registered as the adopted son of his uncle, Grand Prince Songyun, who died at the age of 14. Afterwards, as he grew older, he lived between the palace and Grand Prince Songyung's house. One day, on his way to the palace, he saw a performance by a Sadong troupe, which became the cause of his troubles. The dragon riding in the palanquin showed curiosity at the noise coming from outside. What's so loud? The eunuch who was waiting for the dragon's question looked at the situation and answered. It looks like the Sadong group has made a fuss. Sadong plaque? Let's take a look. The eunuch stopped the dragon's words with a perplexed expression. It's too vulgar for you, so it's better not to look at it. I have to see. When the dragon persisted, the nurse who was riding in the palanquin with the dragon came to help with the evacuation. Mama, in a place where there are a lot of things. I said I had to see it. As the dragon's voice grew louder, the nurse sighed and spoke to the eunuch. Let's take a look around for a while. Wow. Wow. Well done. Yong, who watched the Sedangpi play, was happy and clapped repeatedly. The art of Eorum Sanji, which was performed by narrowly walking on a single rope hung high, was also amazing, and the art of Bionajabi, who placed a bowl or basin on a thin stick and twirled it around, exchanging jokes with my Hasi, a clown, was also amazing. Yong, who watched 3 rounds of Sedangpi's game. Originally there were 6 games, but Yong only saw 3 games because he started from the middle, has not been able to forget that memory ever since. As he watched a child of similar age to him fly in the sky, do tricks and dance, he felt like he was full of freedom that he could not have. And more than anything, I was excited. In the end, the dragon made up his mind. I will become a Sedangpi. King Sejong called Yong, his 3rd son, upon hearing that he desperately had something to say. Since he had some time off from government affairs, King Sejong drank tea and asked Yong a question. So, do you have something to say to this, father? Soja, I want to become a Sedangpi. Phew. Yes, Inum. King Sejong was furious at Yong's absurd remark, spitting out tea. Afterwards, not only King Sejong but also Queen Sohyun and Princess Jeongai came forward to scold him, but the dragon's stubbornness did not break. No, it's going to be a Sedangpi. After receiving the eunuch's report, King Sejong placed his hand on his forehead and let out a long sigh. I heard you has gotten better, so this time the dragon, these damn children. As Sejong's and the entire family's worries deepened, the fragrance eventually emerged. Yang called the dragon to sit down and quietly asked a question. Yom, did you say you wanted to become a shrine member? Yes. Is it better to dance and sing like a Sadong troupe, or is it better to watch a troupe perform? The dragon could not easily answer Hyang's question and twisted his head. Hyang, who saw the dragon struggling and not properly guessing what he liked, asked the question again. If you become a Sadong group, you won't be able to eat your favorite medicine or candy properly. Are you still going to become a Sadong group? I don't like that, but isn't it nice to see the Sedangpi play? Yes. Then it's simple. When you grow up to be a great person, you can call the shrine and take a look, right? If your name rises, you will be able to gather all the shrine tiles from all over the country and see them, right? The dragon's mouth widened as he imagined Hyang's words. The incense poured cold water on the dragon, who was having such happy thoughts. By the way, I think you won't be a great person in this guy's eyes. Why? Look at it now. How can you become a great person when you go out of your way to become a member of the shrine and make not only your Abama, but also your mom and sister worry? I will become a great person. King shook his head at the dragon's shout. It's hard. No, it's impossible. I don't listen and I don't study. No way. You can do it. Really? Yes. I promised. King smiled at the dragon's firm answer. Okay, then let me make a promise too. If you learn properly from Master Prince, I will take responsibility and show you the shrine plaque. If you grow up to be a great person, I'll invite shrine troops from all over the country and give them a tour. I promised. It's a promise. At Hyang's words, Yong took a similar path as you. King Sejong, who received the report that the dragon's mind was corrected by incense, was devastated for the first time in a long time. Haha. Indeed, it is Chisaro. Indeed, he is the eldest son. As King Sejong was happy, the ministers also came to his side and helped. This is indeed the Hongbok of Joseon. That's right. Meanwhile, Hyang, who was thinking about her two younger brothers in her room, shook her head. One guy is ironclad and the other is a jerk. How can you suffer in an area that is famous for being difficult to heal even if you suffer? At least I succeeded in getting them to study, so I have to thank the teachers. The teachers Hyang mentioned were the teachers who taught Hyang in the 21st century when he was a high school student. Teachers who knew Hyang's famous virtue gave him the following advice. If you don't want to be criticized for being a nerd, succeed. Become an expert or a saint, and you will be called a lover with a maniacal hobby, instead of a fucking nerd. Even if you like alcohol, if you empty your soju glass while dragging a trash can on your Sagananango, you are a loser who only drinks alcohol. But if you wear a luxury suit and drink high-quality liquor at a hotel bar, you are evaluated as someone who enjoys drinking. It's really dirty, isn't it? That's the way the world is. The scent that had been reminiscing about old times like that made me scratch my head. Anyway, so am I, and so are those guys. If fans like this come out, don't you think there will be a Gianjali fan club in the future? Even though a small typhoon was brewing over the prince's discipline problem, many officials in the court did not pay much attention. The only thing left to do is work when you don't have time to worry about that. Looking at the books and scrolls that kept accumulating even though they worked hard, the prince's career paths were stories of officials from another world. And the biggest reason they didn't care was because someone with an incredibly strong presence called Hyang was holding out as the successor. The crown prince is holding on tight anyway, so is there any need to worry? However, there were also those who were troubled by unresolved questions. Pasan was a 9th grade industrial academic trainee and worked as a regular 8th grade industrial academic trainee and researcher at the Research Institute. Big Hahundo, why are you looking like that these days? What's wrong at home? A lab colleague who found Hassan with an unhappy expression asked him a question. Since Hassan's younger brother was also working as an industry academic trainee and researcher, the institute officials were calling him Big Hahundu and Little Hahundu. The trap was that my younger brother was taller. Hassan, who was asked a question by a fellow official, shook his head and gave a noncommittal answer. Oh, no. Just by looking at your expression, it looks like there's a big problem at home. Well, there's an unresolved problem. In response to Hassan's reply, his colleague responded with an expression that seemed like he was having a hard time. If there's a problem you can't solve, just ask someone else. What? I'm having trouble all alone. Let's go quickly. Yes, yes. Hassan's lukewarm answer made his fellow officials furious. Thing, are you in and out at that age? Let's go together. No, that's not it. Wow. Follow me. In the end, the Ojirian official dragged Hassan to Isunji. What's going on? When Suunji Lee asked about business, Hassan hesitated. Well, that's... Speak quickly. Isn't time passing? Precious time. Hassan, who had made up his mind at Suunji Lee's urging, opened his mouth. There is a problem that cannot be solved at all. At Hassan's words, Suunji Lee's eyes began to sparkle. Unsolvable problem? Huh. It's a difficult problem that not even the greatest hundo in the world can solve. Does this appeal to Europe and America? Okay. What's the problem? Where on earth are these people that the crown prince is talking about? Huh. Suunji Lee and her colleagues just blinked at Hassan's question, which was far beyond their expectations. I don't understand. Why is COI suddenly? In response to Suunji Lee's question about the reason, Hassan added, it may seem like self-praise, but the people in the government who know the most about COI are me, my younger brother, and the church members who joined us. That's right. Suunji Lee and his colleagues nodded at Hassan's words. After gathering his words for a moment, Hassan continued speaking. Although 30 years have passed since our family settled in Joseon, we still had some contact with church members from Ming Dynasty. Through him, I was able to hear stories about the Catholic countries called COI in Joseon. However, Hassan's explanation went on for a long time. Lee Soon-ji, who listened to Hassan's story with a serious face, came to a conclusion. I don't think this is a problem that will end in my line. Move with me. Yes. Lee Sun-ji stood up and warned the official who came with him. I would like you to keep this matter as quiet as possible, even for your own sake. In response to Lee Sun-ji's warning, the official swallowed his saliva with a pale face and answered, "Yes, yep. No, you better move along too. I will definitely keep it confidential. There is such a thing as this? A body that has already been thrown away. Don't talk nonsense, just follow me." The official responded to Lee Sun-ji's firm command with a tearful expression. Yeah. Pasan, who was watching the scene from the side, tapped his colleague on the shoulder. "I'm sorry. That's okay. I just dug my own grave. This damn thing is. Welcome." Yep. So what you're saying is that even COI couldn't make the things that His Majesty the Crown Prince said were so's. Pasan nodded to Jianko's question. Is there any solid evidence? Pasan immediately answered Jianko's question. The clearest evidence is those sailboats. Sailboats? Yes. Do you remember the time when I went to Ming to rescue glass craftsmen under orders from Your Majesty? Jiancho nodded to Hassan's question. I know. In the end, didn't your younger brother leave for his hometown because he couldn't find a craftsman of the level he wanted? Yes. The condition he put forward at that time was that he be a craftsman capable of making plate glass and objects called lenses, and the standard for subsequent plate glass was to be at least 2 feet by 2 feet, approximately 70 centimeters. When Hassan told the story to his relatives, they were horrified. Is that Crown Prince Italian? What do you mean? Making such large quantities of plate glass began in Italy some time ago. We only heard about it recently. In other words, His Majesty the Crown Prince was aware of technology that had only recently been developed in a country he had never visited. Jiancho immediately countered Hassan's words. Isn't it just that His Majesty the Crown Prince has set the bar high? It has to be like this. That may be true, but it was a very detailed standard that could not be met without some detailed knowledge. And Hassan paused for a moment and raised his hand to point to the hallway. The most incomprehensible thing is those sailing ships. In particular, the battleship at the end is the biggest problem. Battleship? Why? From what I heard, there is not a single country among the West that has built ships like that. Huh. In response to his relative's shocked reaction to the plate glass issue, Hassan asked what he was most curious about. By the way, are there any boats made by Catholic pagans that do not use oars and are driven only by sails? Yes. I once went to my hometown with the eunuch of the famous emperor named Zheng He. Since I was already back home, I wanted the Mediterranean to make more money, and the Spanish built a big ship. Something like Carac? What does he look like? That is. In response to Hassan's question, his relative drew a picture on paper from memory. Hassan, who saw the picture, asked again. So, this is the latest model used by the heretics? Yes. At that time, the sailboat in the picture my relative drew was the sailboat that His Majesty the Crown Prince ordered to be the first generation. Do you have that picture? In response to Jianko's question, Hassan reached into his sleeve and pulled out a piece of paper. Jiancho's face hardened when he saw the picture drawn on the paper. The ship drawn on paper was a bit rough, but it almost resembled what the Scent called a first-generation ocean sailing ship. Looking at the expression on New Year's Day, Hassan continued. What's even more strange is the new armor that began to be supplied from the Nagumwi. It's covered with cloth on the outside, but no matter how you look at it, it's just a pair of plate armor. That's right, the swordsmanship that Nagumwis practice is the swordsmanship of Sui. Yes, I know. Among the books you saved, a book on swordsmanship in which the swordsmanship of the swordsman was recorded was brought in, and it was made available to Gapsa of the Nagumwi who had not mastered the swordsmanship or other swordsmanship. However, you can't make such perfect armor with just a few pictures. They didn't have the technology to put it in a mold and print it all at once. It's literally a new technology. That's why I tell you I don't know. Where on earth are these people that the Crown Prince is talking about? What you're saying is, you said it was a lie, but this must have been what you had in mind. Then why? Did they say it was CO? The question arises, why are you so wary of COI? It's a question that needs to be thought about. Zhang Cho, who was nodding his head, gave attention to Lee Sun-ji, Hassan, and the official who had been dragged in unexpectedly. Let's keep this matter quiet for the time being. If you do something wrong, the rise and fall of Joseon could be at stake. Yes. A few days later, the Institute's official holiday. A slave came to Hassan's house. Please come to the New Year's office by the end of the evening, 9 p.m. Okay. The slave who delivered the news said hello and quietly disappeared. After drinking, Pasin headed to Zhang Chou's house. As soon as Nobak, who was loitering in front of the gate, found Hasan, he quietly guided him to the Sarangi. Nari, the guest you've been waiting for has arrived. Please take me inside. Yes. Please eat it. I understand. Pasin, who went up to the main hall of the Sarangi, turned his head and looked at the Sarangbang. Pasin, who saw King Sejong seated at the head table in the very back of the room, quickly bowed deeply. God. The discipline of industry in academia? Sure. Please come in quietly. Yes. At King Sejong's order, Pasin entered the room and took a seat in the last seat. I think we're all there now, so let's get to the point. Yes, Your Highness. The work begins over there at Hundo. Zhang Chou explained the circumstances of the incident in detail. After hearing the explanation, Sejong nodded. Gwaine has been having similar questions lately. I read the books the Crown Prince had collected, but there was no book that even explained what the Crown Prince said. Then, where did the Crown Prince's knowledge come from? Zhang Chou answered King Sejong's question. God also had similar questions. When I think about the most recent issue of heliocentrism, it seemed like I couldn't explain it because it was an obvious fact that didn't need to be explained. Is that possible? Li Sunji came forward and answered King Sejong's question. In the case of God, there were often cases where the answer came to mind right away when I saw a certain formula, but I had a hard time explaining the solution. I think it's something like that. As Li Sunji defended the fragrance, Choi Hae-sen added, when I look back on the design and experimentation of the Führer, I have a strong feeling that even though I already knew the result, the gods made me know. Why on earth? No one immediately opened their mouths to King Sejong's question. After a while, Zhang Yinji opened his mouth. I think it might be because of your relationship. It's because of the Crown Prince's age. When Sejong nodded, Zhang Yinji continued speaking. If you look at your actions so far, you first did things that earned recognition, and then based on those achievements, you did even greater things. If such a process had not occurred, how likely would it have been for the large and small officials of the royal court to have heard the words of the emperor? You anticipated that and did it, and used COE as an excuse? It is most likely. Sejong, who was stroking his beard and considering the possibilities, looked at Hasan. Did you say Hundo? Yes, Your Highness. Are these people called COE really as ruthless as the Crown Prince said? But there are still others. Hasan strongly criticized the people's recklessness. Indeed, the pride of these people, that they are descendants of the great empire called Rome, reaches to the heavens. There are people who have no hesitation in killing those who believe in other gods, claiming that it is the will of the god they believe in. And there are many people who are as greedy for technology as they are for wealth. Then, if we meet without preparation, it will end up like the Crown Prince said? Yes. Then, hearing Hassan's words, Sejong began to organize his thoughts. I command the officers. I will listen. Sejong gave orders in a cautious voice. In my opinion, most of the things the Crown Prince has created or announced so far came from his head. However, make it known to the outside world that it is COE's, just like the Crown Prince did. This is a plan to kill two birds with one stone. One of them is to protect the Crown Prince by making other countries think that this technology belongs to COE. The other is to invest time and energy into finding COI, giving you time to elude him. You know what I mean, right? I will keep this in mind. And Hahan too. You don't know that you have to keep this confidential, right? Hasan bowed his head and answered King Sejong's question. God. Hasan named Muhammad al-Otabi. Joseon is where I will settle down and die. I will protect your confidentiality in the name of my family. Can you swear in the name of the God you believe in? I swear to you in the name of Allah, the one God. I will not reveal any secrets, not even to my family. Don't forget that there will be a price. In this way, a secret that would become the biggest source of controversy and trouble for historians in the future was born in the Sarangi of the first year of the Joseon dynasty. Guy. King Sejong, who was returning to the palace from his house at the beginning of the year, suddenly burst into laughter. What's going on, Your Majesty? It's nothing special. Sejong lightly waved his hand and grumbled inwardly. Child, he must have had some sense of text. And yet you were removing the hour hand? There's a lot of government work going on right now. Should I just pass it on? Sejong, who was thinking about his nasty son who made him do things by talking about text messages whenever he got the chance, shook his head. No, you can't be a father worse than your children. Yes? It's nothing special. I'm just saying that the ministers will be busy starting tomorrow. Yes, to say, huh? My father will prepare the ground as much as possible so that you can ascend to the throne and exercise your will to your heart's content. That night, all the ministers were put under the scissors. Okay. Lee Yoon-taek, a Hojo official, was groaning with a book in front of him. It doesn't work this way, it doesn't work that way. Lee Yoon-taek, who was calculating while moving the branches spread out on one side of the desk, scattered the branches and screamed, I can't find an answer. There is no hole in the budget. Ugh. Look. When Lee Yoon-taek lost his temper and went wild, fellow officials nearby caught him. Catch. Catch. Be patient. Hold on. As soon as the commotion subsided, Lee Yoon-taek was immediately taken to Kim branch of the Hojo office. Looks like you have some strength left? I even turned the desk over. I apologize, Captain. What the hell is the problem? There is no budget, sir. At Lee Yoon-taek's answer, Kim Ji-yeom's face was crumpled. Damn. The biggest problem with Sejong's step-by-step progress was the budget. After opening the country, Joseon significantly reduced the budget used by the government. This was because he was well aware that the people were unable to live due to excessive tax collection at the end of the Goryeo dynasty. It was natural that expenditures were reduced in order to reduce various miscellaneous taxes as much as possible and operate the government with the resulting reduced revenues. As a result, King Sejong set the period of Jianjiang at 10 years. Jianjiang's goal was to gradually change the revenue sector, reform central and local administration, and ultimately strengthen Joseon's capabilities and expand them to the outside world. Sejong, too, was well aware of the importance of the budget needed in this process, so he focused on carrying out the resale business. At the right time, the monopoly of candy proposed by the Crown Prince was a boon that could significantly expand finances. However, with the establishment of monopoly stores at the county level, a significant amount of assets were consumed for facility investment funds, reducing the room for budget management. In addition, as it was decided to purchase major parts of the Gapsikjang Chongtong and Masang Chongtong from the private sector, budget space was greatly lost. In fact, King Sejong was also well aware of this problem. Therefore, everything from purchasing major parts for the Führer to building a national steel mill was always aware of the limitations of the budget. However, King Sejong did not like the slow handling of issues directly related to national defense due to budget constraints. To solve this problem, King Sejong mobilized bold measures. King Sejong's intention was to control the finances of the Nesu Sangji. Nesu Byoljwa was an organization created for the purpose of managing the wealth inherited from the Goryeo royal family and the private property of the Lee Songjiwai family in the Hamgyongdo region. It also managed land and wealth going to the royal family, and King Sejong took control of this part. At a gathering of royal relatives, King Sejong made the following request. For the rise of our Joseon, the sacrifices of many elders and brothers are necessary. Since there was no one who opposed the king's request, all royal family members who received King Sejong's request agreed. When the royal family all agreed, King Sejong handed out a memorandum to them one by one. The contents of the memorandum, written in King Sejong's handwriting and stamped not only with the royal seal but also with the royal seal and head, were as follows. For the next 5 years, 70% of the previously received salary will be paid. For the next 5 years, you will pay the same amount of bonus you received for the first time, and after that, you will pay 20% more. Because it was pretty good content, the royal family all tolerated their complaints. And this memorandum was recognized as the first national bond certificate of Joseon. In this way, flexible funds were injected from the domestic budget account, but overall, the situation was tight with little room to spare. And the biggest reason for this was the research institute in the township and the steel mill built in Pyongan Island. Abama, please set a budget. Get out, you bastard. Kang's Research Institute was an institution that sucked up budget, or rather consumed it like drinking cold water, to the extent that conversations like this occurred a couple of times a month. However, Kang also had something to say. No, I'm not just spending money at random. The budget itself is like that. So what can I do? As proven in the last audit, the fragrance never squandered its budget. The only problem was that the budget of the Joseon dynasty itself was too small in absolute value, and the location of the steel mill located in Pyongan-do was a problem. The steel mill built under the direction of Kim Deok-soo, the founder of the Unju Kim clan, was located about 200 ri, about 80 kilometers, from the border. Due to location problems, new defense units had to be organized and deployed, which was the main reason why the budget dried up. Although the budget dried up, the coffers were not literally empty. Although the funds to move the government were prepared, all the reserves prepared just in case were exhausted. After checking the situation, Kim Ji-yeom quenched his appetite. TSK, it can be resolved as long as the Mid-Autumn Festival passes. The subordinate officials reacted to Kim Ji-yeom's words. The question is whether we can get there safely until then. If there's a flood or a plague, it's all over. Kim Ji-yeom screamed at the words of his subordinate officials. The problem is that you are so pessimistic. If I live a little more positively, what will happen? I apologize. If you apologize, don't create something to apologize for. Go and do your work. I can't see the scrolls piled up over there. Yes, yep. At Kim Ji-yeom's displeased order, the subordinate officials quickly returned to their seats. Kim Ji-yeom, who was left alone in his seat, let out a long sigh. The problem is that there is not enough budget. There is no answer. Kim Ji-yeom sighed again and complained about the vague problem that was difficult to find an answer to. Should I just file an appeal to have it sent to the local government? You bastard, get out! Kiang, who was kicked out after requesting additional budget, headed to the East Palace and complained. These days, you don't even call me a crown prince. Damn, what is the budget? While Hyang was complaining about a situation where he couldn't come up with an answer even after thinking about it, his eyes caught the sight of monks moving behind the eunuch. Why are you a monk? The eunuch who followed Hyang's question answered immediately. I think he is going to give a sermon in the Middle Palace. It's okay to go out in public. Just hearing the word bull in Buddhism reminded Hyang of the ministers who started the game, and Hyang, who had been speaking, stopped walking. Lowering? Found. Let's attack Japan. No, let's sell it to Japan. Yes? The eunuch's head was twisted in an angle, but Hyang retraced the way he came and walked briskly towards Junjiangjin. What's happening all of a sudden? Again, there is no budget. King Sejong first drew the line on the return of incense. However, I didn't mind the scent. Abama, how about starting a book business? Book business? You are selling Buddhist scriptures to the Japanese nation. Sejong's eyes widened at Hyang's words. No, the monks who had not yet left also had their eyes widened. If you look at the relationship between Joseon and Japan at that time, it wasn't that bad. In the case of Joseon in the early days of its founding, the first thing used to prevent damage from Japanese pirates was a diplomatic solution. At that time, the Joseon dynasty outwardly promised to sever relations with Japan, but inwardly strengthened diplomatic relations with Japan. Diplomatic relations were established not only with the shogunate government, but also with local nobles such as the Kuju Jido Temple, the Great Nai Clan, the Small Two Halls, the Great Friend Hall, and the Lord of Tsushima. When this policy of bridging the gap was slowly taking effect, we encountered an unexpected reef. Yoshihiro Aoki and Tsushima Lord Sokitashige had died, and Joseon's efforts were ineffective as Wada Simon took control of Kuju and Tsushima Island and encouraged Japanese pirates to plunder Joseon. However, the cord of friendly relations between Joseon and Japanese nobles still remained. Just before the conquest of Tsushima in the first year of King Sejong, Joseon informed the Japanese nobles of the conquest of Tsushima. When Joseon revealed its intention to conquer Tsushima Island, Guju Dedosa replied as follows. The Japanese are enemies of Japan, bandits, so we demand that Joseon punish them severely by force. Note 1. Hasn't the Japanese government asked us for woodblock prints of Buddhist scriptures more than once? King Sejong and the ministers nodded to Hyang's question. That's right. It was like that just a little while ago. In April of this year, an envoy from the King of Japan, to be more precise, the shogun of the Muromachi shogunate, and Joseon recognized the shogun as the monarch of Japan, requested a copy of the Tripitaka Koreana woodblock. At the time, King Sejong rejected this request. There is only one quality of Tripitaka Koreana woodblock, and since it has been handed down since our ancestors, we cannot freely give it away. The King of Japan's demands were very persistent, sometimes even calling for war, and in some cases envoys were detained. However, that did not mean he could give the Tripitaka Koreana woodblocks, and since severing the relationship would block the copper import line, the only thing King Sejong could do was treat the envoy well and send it off. In the end, in response to Japan's demands, there was talk of making Buddhist scriptures and woodblocks in the royal rights. However, making woodblock prints of Buddhist scriptures was impossible in Joseon, where support, Confucianism, and Buddhism was the national policy. So, only 10 copies of the Tripitaka Koreana are being printed. So, one piece is given as a gift to the King of Japan, another piece is given to the Kuju Jildosa, and another piece is given to Lady Dini as a gift. I don't know about the King of Japan, but Guju Jildosa and Dini did a good job to Joseon. Sejong nodded at Hyang's words. Not really. Then what about the remaining 7 qualities? We need to compete with other Japanese noble families. I will sell it to whoever will pay the highest price. Who? Aha! King Sejong and his ministers exclaimed an exclamation at Hyang's words. Japan, which was quite behind in terms of culture, desperately wanted to acquire the cultural relics of Joseon and Ming. In particular, since Buddhist sutras were so rare, the King of Japan requested Buddhist sutras and woodblock prints. If that's the case, wouldn't it be better to take about 50 pictures instead of 10? Tisk. King Sejong clicked his tongue in response to Meng Sasong's question. Have you forgotten that the rarer a coin is, the more valuable it becomes? Why did the crown prince decide that there were 10 qualities? Here comes the emperor. I told you not to do anything that would be embarrassing. After saying something to Meng Sasong, King Sejong looked at Hyang with gentle eyes. Are you trying to sell 10 pieces like that? Yes. With the name Tripitaka Koreana in the limited quantity of only 10 pieces, its value in Japan will skyrocket. I guess so. Also, tell the monks to make woodblock prints of Buddhist scriptures, stamp or copy them, and make books. The Buddhist scriptures are taken to the Japanese country and sold. In this way, Joseon can receive 2 benefits within itself and 3 benefits with Japan. 2 gains, 3 gains? At Hyang's words, King Sejong and the ministers' bodies gradually tilted towards Hyang. After quenching his thirst for a moment, King explained what the benefits were. There are 2 benefits that can be gained within Joseon. One is that the lands still owned by the temple can be recovered once again. Since the founding of Joseon, the policy of pro-Confucianism and suppression of Buddhism was consistently pursued. King Taejong consolidated numerous Buddhist denominations into 7 orders, confiscated 80,000 temple slaves, and turned them into government slaves, and took away 60,000 pieces of land. Following this, King Sejong merged the 7 religious orders into 2, Seonjeon and Jaejeon, and left only 36 temples nationwide. In terms of land, 3,000 pieces of good land out of 11,000 pieces of land were confiscated, and most of the remaining slaves were also taken away. A certain percentage of the proceeds from the sale of Buddhist sutras is given to the monks to help them make a living, so that you can make a living even without land. This is another benefit because it will help stabilize public sentiment. Right? Sejong nodded at the explanation of the fragrance. Although he continued to adopt a policy of suppressing Confucianism and Buddhism, the presence of Buddhism had not yet diminished not only within the palace but also among the people. Relaxing it in moderation can also help. So, what are the 3 benefits to be gained from Waegok? The first thing that comes to mind is that Gujujildosa and Dini will become closer to us. That's right. It is a great benefit for powerful noble families like the Dini clan or Gujujildosa to become closer to Joseon. Another benefit is that if we sell Buddhist scriptures and bring in rice or silver from Japan, we can escape from budgetary pressure. The final benefit is that we can make the people of the Japanese country admire our Joseon by spreading the Buddhist scriptures that are clearly written in Joseon to the Japanese country. King Sejong smiled and accepted the explanation. Other benefits are good, but I like the last one the most. What do you think? What a great idea. Then we have to put it into action. Please send someone to the main temple of Zen Buddhism and corrections immediately. I follow your orders. 3 months later, the Aoki family in Kuju was busy receiving envoys from Joseon. Thank you for your hard work in coming to Wanro. Moriharu, who became the lord of the Aoki family after his deceased brother, politely welcomed the Joseon envoy. Thank you for being so welcoming. Fortunately, there was no typhoon, so I made it across safely. Moriharu's courteous hospitality was greeted with polite courtesy by the envoy from the royal family. After serving tea to the Shinigami, Moriharu got to the point. So, what are you doing here all the way from Joseon? Have the thieves gone on a rampage again? It's still quiet. I have come here in compliance with the orders of His Majesty the Prime Minister. Here is a personal letter from His Highness the Prime Minister. The Shinigami took the scroll out of his pocket and untied the knot. In front of Moriharu, who had a neat posture, the envoy read King Sejong's personal letter. Dini, Lord of the Japanese country, please listen. After reading King Sejong's personal letter, Moriharu bowed deeply. I am truly grateful that you are showing such interest. I am even more grateful because my family has its roots in Beach. Here is a gift from His Majesty the Lord to your lord. At the envoy's gesture, an official of the royal rites behind him came in carrying a large wooden box wrapped in silk. What is this? Do you know Heitsa Temple's Tripitaka Koreana? I know. Here is a Buddhist scripture taken with the Tripitaka Koreana. Oh. Moriharu untied the knot of the silk cloth with trembling hands. When the knot was undone, A shiny lacquered wooden box was revealed. On the lid of the box was a Buddha statue carved in relief and covered with gold leaf. Moriharu touched the Buddha statue with trembling hands and declared to the envoy, "I can't believe you gave me such a valuable gift. Our Aoki will fully cooperate with Joseon's affairs from now on." Something similar to this also happened to the envoy who visited the savior. Only Ashikaga Yashimochi, who was the shogun of the Muromachi shogunate and was called the King of Japan, responded with a bit of disappointment. Afterwards, fierce competition took place over the remaining 7 editions of the Tripitaka Koreana. After such competition, the 7 pieces of Tripitaka Koreana were sold for a large sum of 500 crowns of silver, about 1.87 tons, per piece. It was not just the Tripitaka Koreana edition. Buddhist scriptures printed or copied by other temples were also sold for at least 200 niang of silver per piece. I know it is a precious Buddhist scripture, but isn't it too expensive? Do you think this is ordinary Buddhist scripture? Did you know that there are only 36 temples recognized in Joseon? The local monks wrote each word with a brush and carved it out of wood blocks. Just looking at it makes me feel bad. It's not normal. It was a premium brought about by the scarcity of only 36 locations.